Harry Potter, I am just hanging out at Hogwarts. My dear grandpa is actually a werewolf, the truth behind the Philosopher's Stone, and the backup man behind the Four Founders. None of this prevents Lauren from having fun with Seamus, exchanging experiences with the twins, and explaining the weirdness of Quidditch. This is a story about hanging out at Hogwarts. Chapter 1. Lauren Morgan. November 1981, Hampshire, England. On the bustling streets of the city, vendors gradually spread out and looked expectantly at every pedestrian passing by, especially those who had just come out of the cinema next door. They bought some snacks such as puffs on the way home, and brought a headband for their children. Small items are a normal thing. Near the end of the street, the Morgan family of 3 were still reflecting on this happy day. "It's a perfect day, Mrs. Morgan. Maybe I can invite you to spend the next weekend with me." The man walking on the left holding the child is probably in his 20s. He is handsome and has an unstoppable smile on his face. "Well, Mr. Morgan, that's a good suggestion, but I have to think about it carefully." The beautiful woman next to her stuffed the last cream puff into her mouth and swallowed it. She reached out to the man with both hands at the same time, grabbing the man's sleeve while he wasn't paying attention. "Rub it lightly on it a few times." The two looked at each other and laughed. Lauren, who was lying in the man's arms, was speechless. Similar scenes had been played repeatedly in the year since he came to this world. It was so boring that it was unbearable. He hummed with lactose in his mouth, changed into a comfortable position, and planned to continue sleeping. Even though he had the soul of an adult, this body was just that of a 1-year-old child. The happy scene didn't last long. "Peter! You have to pay for your actions." The roar came from behind the young couple, making people's ears hurt, and the sound was filled with overwhelming anger. A short, fat figure in a grey suit sprang out quickly, past the young couple, turned around the corner and disappeared. Turning around, he saw a tall and thin man with a messy beard and hair, and blood-red eyes, staring straight ahead, holding a slender wooden stick in his hand. He was the one who made the roar just now. The young couple on the roadside were a little at a loss. They looked at each other and took a few steps away in tacit agreement. Lauren suddenly felt a strong sense of uneasiness and panic. Goosebumps spread from the back of his neck to his scalp, and his heartbeat was so fast that he could hear it. "Run!" he babbled. Boom! A strong shock wave erupted from the street corner, blowing up the surrounding houses, splashing mud and rocks. The masonry on the floor was lifted, and the sewer opening was exposed. It was like an earthquake. For a moment, little Lauren only saw his father protecting him and his mother. His mother hid him under her body, and her sky-blue skirt blocked his sight. Lauren's eyes glowed with blue light, spreading from the pupils, covering the originally black eyes. Sirius looked sideways, a little surprised that such a young child had a magical riot, but it didn't matter. "Damn Peter!" The warm viscosity seeped into Lauren's clothes, and he fainted. "This is so cruel, Crouch. This damn Death Eater almost blew up an entire street and killed 12 muggles and Peter Pettigrew. He even had only one finger left." Cornelius Fudge in a striped suit looked at the scene and said, with fear still in his eyes. When he arrived, Sirius Black was standing in the infernal scene, letting out an odd laugh. Standing next to him was Barty Crouch. Something big happened yesterday, and they hadn't slept a wink all night. Even so, he still wore a straight tie and his hair was neatly combed. "These damn Death Eaters must go to Azkaban and give him a Dementor's kiss," he thought silently in his mind. According to the regulations of the Secrecy Act, communicate with the Muggle government to provide some compensation to the deceased. He came back to his senses and calmly arranged the orders one by one. The surrounding Aurors were happily clearing the Muggles' memories in an orderly manner. Voldemort had fallen and everything would be fine, they thought. June 1985, Sir Hillier Children's Home, Hampshire. 5-year-old Lauren Morgan helps Sister Joyce sort through donated clothing. Here, older children can help with less strenuous chores, knowing that well-behaved people are more likely to be adopted. "Sister Joyce, when will Mr. Bumble come back?" Lauren missed Mr. Bumble a little, the person in charge of the canteen who gave him some food from time to time. After he left, Lauren felt dizzy from time to time. He guessed it was anemia caused by malnutrition. Upon hearing this disgusting name, Joyce's expression froze, and then she comforted her softly, "Mr. Bumble has gone away, and he probably won't come back to work in our orphanage in the future." Lauren was a little regretful that the free food source was gone. "Can we not eat potatoes tonight?" Lauren felt that he had not eaten as many potatoes in his previous life of more than 20 years as he had eaten in the past few years. Well, maybe we can cook potatoes in a different way. Do you have any suggestions? Joyce knew that the food in the orphanage was barely enough, and more money had to be spent on coal and clothing for the winter. Little Lauren sighed, frowned, and did not answer. Joyce looked at the little person in front of her, with her eyelids twitching out of her crystal blue eyes. She was as sad as an adult and found it funny. People from the church and government are here today and are talking to Ms. Maggie. Maybe we will have new food. Joyce said with relief, or maybe it was to deal with the incident last month. She was like this thought. Before he finished speaking, there was a knock on the door. Joyce, bring Lauren out to hear the good news. The voice of the lady at the door was also filled with joy. The good news you can hear in the orphanage is to take the children with you. Such words made Joyce have some guesses. She immediately picked up Lauren and ran out of the house. Ms. Maggie, what's the good news? Joyce asked eagerly. Come with me, Ms. Maggie replied. Ms. Maggie took the two of them to the living room. She is the director of this orphanage. She is 40 years old this year, but she still walks neatly and with a graceful look. There were two people sitting in the living room. One was wearing a white monk's robe and the other was wearing a single-breasted black coat. He stood up immediately when he saw the three of them. Ms. Maggie began to introduce, this is Deacon Thorne from the church and Mr. Pino from the city hall. Joyce was about to greet the two gentlemen when Pino spoke first. Time is running out, let me introduce the situation. Last week when we were sorting out household registration information, we discovered that Lauren Morgan's mother still has an uncle who is still alive. I called and asked, and he said he was willing to raise Lauren. Thorne added, go through the formalities as soon as possible. We will escort little Lauren tomorrow morning and we can come back before the end of the month. Great! Joyce hugged little Lauren in surprise. God finally saw this suffering child. Lauren was a little overwhelmed. When he opened his eyes, he was already in this orphanage. When he was a little older, Ms. Maggie told him that his parents died in a car accident. Lauren had a vague feeling that this was not the case, but he could not recall the memory before the orphanage. His memories in this world revolve around this orphanage, the gentle sister Joyce, the stern but kind Ms. Maggie, and Mr. Bumble who always gave him food, although he left the orphanage last month. When he suddenly learned that he was about to leave, he felt a little panicked. Ms. Maggie asked Joyce and Lauren to go back and pack some things to take away. She accompanied Mr. Pino and Deacon Thorne to handle the documents. The next morning, at the entrance of the orphanage, Joyce stood outside the car, looking at little Lauren in the back seat of the car, her eyes full of reluctance. She liked this smart little naughty man. He handed him a small bundle wrapped in white cloth, containing some clothes and small items. Come back and see me when you grow up, Lauren. She kissed Lauren's forehead. Lauren's cheeks felt a little hot and he nodded. Cheer up, kid. We have to get going. Mr. Pino, the co-pilot, sounded a little happy. The light blue Ford Anglia gradually accelerated into the distance. Watching the black spots gradually disappear from her field of vision, Joyce couldn't help but ask, did Lauren really go to his relative's house? I don't know, Joyce, this is the result of the above-mentioned handling. Little Lauren will be properly arranged, and Bumble will also be punished by the Lord. Ms. Maggie replied with some helplessness. Bumble deserves to be punished. Joyce still feels sick when she thinks of that man. Chapter 2. This is a small town located at the foot of the mountains with pleasant scenery. The mountain peaks stretch tall and the valley is quiet and quiet. A small road stretches out from behind the town and winds up the mountain. The greenery in the wilderness gradually fills the field of vision, and flowers of various colors that cannot be named make people breathe easier. The air is filled with the fragrance of flowers from fertile pastures, which is refreshing. Deacon Thorne held Lauren in one hand and held the package in the other. Your grandfather, Mr. Bates, lives in a mountain pasture. He raises a flock of sheep with the town residents and grows some wheat himself. You can live a prosperous life. Lauren nodded, lowered his head and caught his breath. He was wearing 2 layers of smocks and wearing thick and heavy spiked boots. This was a valuable item brought out of the orphanage. Sister Joyce let him keep it until she died. The hot sun turned his cheeks red, and Lauren climbed up the mountain panting and feeling dizzy. It has been several years since he traveled back in time, but this body is too small, and his underdeveloped body and brain cannot support him to do many things. Britain in the 1980s was not friendly to an orphaned child. There are a large number of drug dealers, thieves, unemployed youths, and skinheads walking on the streets. The child cannot afford any minor accidents. He is no different from a 5-year-old child now, and it is difficult to realize all his ambitions. The residents of the town watched the two people walking towards the mountain, their expressions became a little frightened, and they started talking among themselves. But the two of them didn't pay attention. Once away from people, Lauren couldn't stand the heat anymore. He took out the hand held by Deacon Thorne, pulled off his smock, leaving only a layer of underwear, took off his hobnail boots, wrapped them in his smock, held them in his hands, and stepped on the spot a few times with his bare feet. There were smooth roads on the road. Stone, he thinks it's totally fine. Let's go, Mr. Thorne, I can keep up. Lauren suddenly became brisk. Thorne smiled and walked forward, pulling Lauren along when encountering steep slopes. In this way, about an hour later, they finally arrived at the mountain pasture. 3 small huts were built on a high ground by the roadside. The hut is exposed to the wind on all sides, but is bathed in bright sunshine. The scenery below the mountain is unobstructed. There is a bench made of roughly nailed wooden boards on the side of the hut. At this moment, an old man is sitting on it with a pipe in his mouth, watching the two people approaching gradually. He has a long beard, grey eyebrows, and deep wrinkles on his forehead. Deacon Thorne stepped forward, stretched out his hand and said, "Hello, Mr. Bates, I'm Thorne." "Yes, sir." The old man replied gruffly as he shook hands. He looked at the two of them and at the little bean-like child in front of him. The sun shone on the grass like eyelashes and fluttered on the sky-blue eyes. There was a shadow, and he felt a little soft-hearted. Lauren felt that the old man was paying more attention to him, so he took advantage of the situation and said, "Hello, Grandpa." He just wants to live peacefully until he can stand on his own, and he doesn't really care about anything else. Afterwards, Thorne asked Lauren to take the package and rest next to him while he talked with Mr. Bates. Lauren placed the package on the stand next to the cabin and looked around. The sun is full and the grass and trees are fragrant. It is really a wonderful scene. Soon after, Deacon Thorne came down the mountain, and they seemed to have completed the handover. "Come in, you need to tidy up if you want to live here." The old man stood at the door and shouted loudly. Lauren ran into the house. There was only one room in the house. There was a small bed in the back of the room. There was a table and chairs next to it. There was a closet on the wall. There was a stove in the corner with a big pot on it and wood on the other side, built together to form a ladder reaching up to the attic. After stuffing the baggage and blouse into the closet, the old man had already laid out coarse cloth sheets in the attic, and stuffed some cotton wool into the coarse quilt. "This kind of bed is enough in summer. I'll make you something out of wood later, just make do with it for now." Wooden dining table in ranch cabin at night. The wheat is cooked in goat's milk, and the aroma of wheat and milk are mixed together. When you take a bite of smoked lamb, the salty aroma spreads in your mouth. With just a sip of goat's milk, the slight fishy smell becomes lighter. There is also a plate of unknown. The famous small wild berries, some sour and some sweet. Lauren followed the old man's example and grabbed a handful and threw them into his mouth. They were sour and sweet. Compared to mashed potatoes, baked potatoes, potato cubes, and all kinds of potatoes, this is heaven. After dinner, Lauren wanted to clear the table. "Boy, just live here. There are some things you can talk about when you grow up." Bates stopped him and took the dishes to the sink outside the house to wash. "Okay, Grandpa." Lauren felt that such an environment would be more comfortable even in the countryside. At night, Lauren slept in the attic. He could feel the smell of green grass in the wilderness. He seemed to be riding the wind through the valley, passing the creek, on the trees, on the clouds, on the edge of the cliff. His head was no longer moving. Fainted. When he woke up in the morning, the sun shone through the attic, and Lauren could hardly remember where he was. The old man wanted to make a bed frame out of wood in the attic, clean up some debris, and let Lauren go to the mountains to play with the shepherd. During the day, Pete, the sheep herder down the mountain, would catch up the sheep from other people in the town and take them to the mountain pasture with the Bates family's sheep to eat grass and drink water. The shepherd was just a 10-year-old kid, and he was very tired of being alone with these stupid goats. When he heard that he was going to take Lauren up the mountain with him, Peter happily accepted the task. We walked through the winding mountain road and put the sheep on the hillside to graze. Peter took Lauren on a wild day, rolling on the soft grass along the hillside, watching mountain eagles drop rabbits on rocks, and picking up brightly colored berries. Lauren was also addicted to the wild fun in the mountains. During the years he spent in the orphanage, he had never been so free and unrestrained without having to worry about any safety issues. At dusk, Pete drove the goats down the mountain with a sheep whip, and Bates led several of his sheep into the sheepfold with salt in his hand. Peter arrived at the small town at the foot of the mountain, used a whistle to summon the children from each family, and took back his own sheep. Life in the mountains reveals poverty, primitiveness, but also comfort and nature. Lauren lived here and gradually got to know the residents of the town. They always looked at him with strange compassion, as if Lauren was suffering from some great tragedy. But when Bates appeared, they changed. He was afraid and did not dare to approach with respect. He also asked Peter, who told him that there were rumors of chaos in the village. It is not credible to say that Mr. Bates has killed people and made a deal with the devil, which will bring about unknown things. Bates would always go into the mountains alone every month when the moon was full. He would come back pale the next morning, unable to do physical work for several days in a row, and seemed to become weak. When Lauren asked, Bates always said that after checking the fruit trees in the mountains, he would give himself a few days off to let his old bones relax. But he never takes Lauren with him into the mountains. Chapter 3. Another winter came, and Lauren Morgan was 10 years old. Heavy snow covers the hillside, the branches, and the thatch on the house, a vast expanse of white. Peter no longer herds sheep, and everyone has also stocked up on winter grain and pasture for the sheep. The residents at the foot of the mountain are making some handicrafts at home and taking them to the city to exchange for money and buy some daily necessities. When the sun came out, Mr. Bates wouldn't let Lauren go to the mountains, saying it would hurt his eyes. When Lauren has nothing to do, he will catch some animals in the forest and look for some plants that can be eaten in winter, but most of the time he has to go to school. Mr. Bates prepared some old textbooks and a dictionary in advance, and Lauren read them when he had nothing to do. He helped teachers and people in the church copy some documents and letters, and quickly mastered these contents. Mr. Bates said he would be a great person. A man of achievement. The school was in a small town at the foot of the mountain. Every morning, Mr. Bates took Lauren down on a sled, and in the evening he carried him back on his back. The days passed like this. On Christmas Eve, a wandering band came to the town, and Lauren made an appointment with Pete to watch their show. Red cloth strips and small lanterns were hung on the trees on both sides of the road, and there was festive music in the shops. The restaurants and bars were crowded with people, and the warm yellow lights made people feel warm. Pete and Lauren were wearing baggy sweaters and sheepskin coats, and each wore a gray and white striped scarf. Lauren put his hands in his pockets and watched as Pete devoured the roasted sweet potatoes he bought on the street. This band is really weird. It's called the Norn Three Goddesses, but it turns out they are all male musicians. Lauren thought for a moment, and there should be number 23 genders in Britain in the 1980s. Why do you care about this? As long as it's fun. Pete didn't care at all. The performance will have to wait for a while. There is a small market over there. Do you want to go shopping? Lauren was very interested and saved some pocket money. You go shopping. I'd rather go inside and sit here than blow the cold wind. Peter shook his head. Lauren goes to the market and asks Pete to help him get a spot. The small market is actually a small market where some vendors set up stalls in the alley behind the performance hall, selling some small things during the rare lively moments in the town. Woolen socks, gloves, Easter eggs, Russian matryoshka dolls, all kinds of weird things are there. Lauren even saw a Chinese 9-link ring. But he just walked around and took a look. He didn't want to buy anything. He was just curious. When they came to the street, Lauren saw a thin, white-haired old man in a neat dress, sitting there with a cup of steaming coffee and slowly drinking it. In front of the old man was a blanket made of unknown animal skin, with 2 large books on it. The pedestrians passing by and the vendors setting up stalls seemed unable to see this person. Lauren felt a little curious and walked up. "Hello, sir. Can you read these 2 books?" Lauren asked. Listening to the childish voice, the old man looked up, seemingly a little surprised by the child in front of him. Lauren looked at the old man's sunken eyes. He could not describe the color of the eyes in front of him. He could only feel that the ancient and mysterious meaning was almost seeping out through his eyes. "Of course, this is what is for sale." The old man showed a free and easy smile. Lauren knelt down and reached out to flip through the 2 books. One was an English book called A Comprehensive Interpretation of Pictographic Symbols. It is thicker than a dictionary and looks like it was copied manually. The handwriting is very neat and the material is a bit like parchment. The other book had no name. When Lauren touched this book, his mind suddenly went into a trance. He opened the title page and the moment his eyes touched it, he felt as if he was about to be sucked into the book. This feeling flashed and disappeared in an instant, as if it was just an illusion. The title page said it was written by a man named Abraham, and Lauren couldn't understand the text behind it. There are some illustrations at the back, the material feels like soft bark, very thin, there are not many pages, and they are connected together with copper rings. The two books seem to contain some kind of occult content. How much? Lauren planned to buy it for fun. Oh, are you really going to buy it? The old man in front of him looked very happy. Of course, if the price is right. Lauren was afraid that the other party would take the opportunity to raise the price. With all due respect, I would like to ask if you are engaged in some kind of copying work. The old man was very interested and seemed to be more concerned about the person in front of him than about selling books. Lauren didn't quite understand what he meant, but he still answered truthfully, yes, I will help the teachers and church people copy some documents and letters. Ha ha ha, okay. It's so interesting. The old man laughed out loud. When he first got the book, he was very happy. As a result, the text behind the title page was translated and read, except for the high priest and the book scribes, anyone else who reads this book will be viciously cursed. Before sending off the Book of Abraham, he asked volubly whether Lauren was engaged in some kind of copying work, and the result was as he expected. The old man looked at the child in front of him as if he were seeing himself hundreds of years ago. Seeing that Lauren was a little frightened, he added, "Sorry, I remembered something from a long time ago." The old man did not continue, but stretched out his hand to wrap the two books in a blanket and handed them to Lauren. "Then I'll charge you 13 pounds. The old man said casually. Lauren's heart moved. He only had 13 pounds on him. I don't know if it's a coincidence or another reason, but this old man looks weird. He handed the money to the old man and accepted the book. The old man collected the money, stood up, straightened his clothes, turned and walked away. "That's it, we will meet again, Lauren. There are already magic waves in this little guy, and the Book of Access must know his name. They will meet again." Lauren nodded numbly. On the way to the performance hall, he kept thinking about where the old guy had put the cup of coffee and the small bench. He was really like a magician. He decided to read these two books as stories, and he didn't look up any information if he couldn't understand them. It's like this in TV dramas. A mysterious person gives you a mysterious thing. The more you check it, the more you fall into the trap designed by him. This kind of person can't get any better. Entering the performance hall, the performance has already begun. Lauren looked around and found Pete in the front row, stage right. Pete also saw him, stood up and waved, calling, "Hey! Lauren! Here! This band is really interesting." The two said hello, and Lauren sat next to Peter and watched the show. Almost all of the male musicians on the stage have long hair, and they are not overly rock and roll hip-hop as Lauren thought. There are songs of various styles, and it is a performance by a serious band. The musicians on stage set the mood, and the audience in the audience clapped, screamed, and laughed along with them. Such happy moments are rare in the small town. People around Lauren commented that most of the songs performed were unfamiliar, but the styles were all very special. This band is amazing. They will definitely release their own record after the tour. They will definitely become popular. A group of young people were shouting. Lauren's somewhat impetuous heart calmed down with the singing and dancing. In this winter, this Christmas, he began to miss Grandpa Bates's cheese, Sister Joyce's arms, and the cookies Mr. Bumble gave him that day. What did the biscuits smell like? Lauren felt that time passed so quickly that he couldn't even remember what Mr. Bumble looked like. Chapter 4. In the evening, Lauren sat by the stove, flipping through the two books she had received during the day, while Grandpa Bates packed his bags. The comprehensive interpretation of hieroglyphs is not an introductory introduction to symbols. The hieroglyphs in the book may refer to the runes introduced in a large chapter in the middle. The first half of the book contains some occult and alchemical content, which Lauren seems to be mostly baseless fantasies. The use of dragon's blood, the use of magical animal materials, and the names of other plants were something Lauren had never heard of in his entire life. When making it, there is also a distinction between the full moon and the missing moon, and the difference between a rainy day with thunder and a rainy day without thunder. Is this British feudal superstition? Lauren thought it would be interesting to read it as a fantasy. But the second half of the book is more interesting and is the autobiography of a man who calls himself Nico Flamel. He told how he was born in Paris in the 14th century. In his early days, he worked as a scribe to copy books, letters, and wills for various noble figures. Occasionally I get some alchemy content, and Nico takes up alchemy as a hobby. Ordinary life took a huge turn one day. A man in a black cloak came to his dream and told him that he would receive a magical book. He must study hard and understand it thoroughly to obtain extraordinary and surprising information. Strength. This dream came true. The book says, I have in my hand an ancient and huge book that was exchanged for 2 florins. It does not use paper or parchment like other books, but is made of fine and smooth young bark. The cover is tightly wrapped in brass and is engraved with words or strange symbols. It has 3 groups of 7 pages, including the first page. The 7th page of each group does not have any text, but there is no text on the 7th page. On the 7th page of one group, there is a drawing of a wand swallowed by a giant snake. When Lauren saw this, he took another book and looked at it carefully. This should be the Book of Abraham. The content in the book does seem to be stamped with some kind of metal and then inked. It is not any text that Lauren has seen and cannot understand at all. The book has 21 pages in total, and every 7th page is filled with weird pictures. The first 7 pages depict a simple cane with 2 unknown snakes wrapped around it, one of which is devouring the other. The book must be a few years old, and the pages are yellowish. The simple lines outline a picture without color, let alone clear. But when Lauren looked at the painting, there were colorful and clear images in his mind. The cane was a rustic black, and the 2 snakes had white spots. He could even feel the matte texture of the scales. Lauren guessed that life was too boring, and there was a lot of online film and television information in his previous life, so he made up his mind. The second 7 pages, that is, page 14, shows a cross, but it is not Jesus who is crucified on the cross, but a snake. Lauren looked at this picture. He felt that the snake in this picture was different from the previous one. The snake on the cross seemed to have 2 small horns on its head. The third page, which is page 21, shows several clear springs emerging from a desert, and many snakes emerge from the springs. Lauren's impression of this picture was more about the spring water. The scene of the spring water gushing out in his mind seemed to be able to feel the sweetness and coolness of the spring water. In addition, the 4th and 5th pages were also accompanied by 4 small pictures. They were too small and Lauren could not make up for anything. In general interpretation of hieroglyphics, Nicole Flamel's opinion on this is that these small pictures are not important, they seem to be in the narrative or some popular mythology, and there is no mention of alchemy. The rest of the self-report became gibberish, with many spelling errors and nonsense grammar. Scroll further back to see some travel notes. This Nicholas Flamel has traveled to almost every place in the world and recorded the customs and habits of many places. Of course, there are also some garbled words mixed in. Lauren picked it up and read it with gusto. Grandpa Bates put away his bundle and looked at the sky through the small window. Although it was snowing at this time, the clouds were very thin, and a notched moon could be seen hanging low in the sky. Grandpa Bates closed the small window and stuck it tightly with a wooden stick. Lauren, listen up. I'm going to the mountains tomorrow, and you stay at home, as usual, you know. There is a time like this every month, and Lauren can't get any results, okay, I know. Grandpa Bates may not know that he is no longer young, and the winters of the past 2 years have been particularly difficult. Especially in the few days after returning from the mountains, I felt as weak as if I had been seriously ill. Lauren occasionally felt that, as the residents down there said, Bates was making a deal with the devil on the mountain. But after living together for several years, there was nothing strange about Bates. He might have a somewhat withdrawn temperament, but after getting to know him, he was just a slightly stronger little old man, just like an ordinary farmer. In any case, he decided to secretly follow Grandpa Bates tomorrow to find out. The next morning, we had breakfast. Grandpa Bates took the packed baggage and the walking stick made of wooden sticks, and went out to go up the mountain. Lauren was not in a hurry. Even if there was no thick snow on the mountains in winter, it was still difficult to walk. He slowly finished feeding the sheep and put enough hay and water for the sheep into the fold for several days. Use a wooden rope and a glass bottle filled with water to make a simple timing mechanism. The water in the glass bottle will continue to drip out. The temperature of the sheep fold will not freeze the glass bottle. After enough time, the hay will flow from the rafters. Fall down. This is to prevent the sheep from quickly eating up several days' worth of food. After doing all this, Lauren packed a few days' worth of dry food, coarse bread, cheese, and smoked lamb, a knife, a windproof lighter and a windproof tarp in his bag. After thinking about it, he put the fur blanket of the weird old book dealer in it. After locking the door, it was already after lunch. Lauren followed the traces on the snow and the fallen weeds and flowers in the direction of Bates. The trees were covered with a layer of white coat, and scattered snowflakes occasionally fell on Lauren. The wind on the road blew hard and cut Lauren's exposed skin like a knife. He tried his best to protect himself with a hat, gloves, and scarf, but the wind still penetrated his body and bones through the slits between his clothes. After walking for a while, Lauren took out the tarp and blanket and put them on his body, and then put a layer of tarp on the outside to protect Lauren's body like a cloak. The effect is very good, the wind that always penetrates the body is blocked, and the blanket is warm, as if sitting by the stove. This must be polar bear type fur, Lauren thought. In less than an hour, I followed the obvious traces into the forest and came out from the other corner. The footprints on the snow extended to a boulder. One side of the boulder was close to a small hill. The footprints were scattered around the boulder, spread into a piece and disappear. Lauren certainly didn't think Mr. Bates had turned into a stone spirit. There are some wooden stakes and wooden poles next to the stone to form a simple labor-saving lever. It can be seen that Grandpa Bates did not move the stone with brute force. There should be a cave behind the stone, and there should be similar labor-saving devices in the cave. After circling a few times, Lauren cleared a place in another leeward area and built a shelter with branches and tarpaulin, hoping to hear some sounds in the cave. Wrapped in a fur blanket, he didn't feel any cold, so he didn't light a fire. It was warmer than a polar bear's fur. He had eaten something and was quietly waiting for the night to come. Chapter 5. The night is getting darker, and the round white moon hangs in the night sky. The silver-white moonlight shines on the white snow, the mountains, trees, and the earth. The moonlight and the snow complement each other, making it beautiful and quiet. The white fur blanket kept her warm, and Lauren was a little bored in the shelter of the branches. The quiet world was broken by a roar. Ah! Bates's suppressed and painful voice came from the cave, with some deepness, like the sound of someone writhing on the ground in pain. Ah! The screams of pain became louder and hoarse, and seemed to be accompanied by some kind of relief. It was quiet for a while. Ouch! The sharp howl of the wolf penetrates the rocks and reaches the wilderness, echoing from mountain to mountain. Lauren's complexion suddenly turned pale. Creak! There was the sound of sharp claws scratching across the rocks, and the transformed werewolf inside was scratching. Then there was a dull collision sound, as the werewolf hit the rock wall with his body, trying to find a way out. Lauren took a deep breath, controlled his trembling body, and decided to leave first. No one knows whether Grandpa Bates, who has lost his mind, can come out. After packing his bags, he quickly returned to the cabin under the bright moonlight. The pace became faster and faster, and he gradually started running through the mountains and fields. When he got home, he discovered that the windshielding tarpaulin had cracked a big hole. Lauren opened the door, put a handful of snow into the stove, and lit a fire to melt it. The room gradually became warmer, and as he moistened his throat with a sip of water, he began to organize his thoughts. Grandpa Bates is a werewolf. He transforms uncontrollably every month when the moon is full. He has to go to the mountains to spend the full moon night every month, and then there will be a period of weakness. This would explain Bates' strange habits. The strange rumors in the town are intended to keep the town residents away from Bates. They may be spread by someone in the know, or it may be Bates himself. When one doubt is solved, more doubts emerge. Why would Bates like this be willing to raise a dragster? He is obviously more comfortable when he is alone. Are they really related? If not, what purpose did the church and government at that time have in sending him here? Is this world really the Britain of the 1980s that he knew before? Will there be vampires if there are werewolves? What are the roles of the Holy See and the government? One question follows one question, one doubt follows one doubt. And most recently, the occult knowledge in those two books, is alchemy really just a story? What is the purpose of that weird bookseller? Most importantly, does he want to escape Bates? The complicated thoughts are fruitless. What is certain is that it is impossible for an underage child to travel far. Grandpa Bates's wrinkled face appeared in Lauren's mind, his smile when he said he would achieve great things, his anger when he saw him playing in the snow in single clothes, and his weakness after returning from the mountains every month. It turns out that so much time has passed without realizing it. He decided to wait. Grandpa Bates deserved the trust. Lauren lay on the small bed and fell into a deep sleep. The next day. It was already dark when Lauren woke up. Go to the sheep pen to squeeze out fresh goat milk, boil it and let it cool, and you will feel refreshed after one sip. All the disturbing thoughts from last night were put aside, and Lauren decided to let it be. No matter how complicated things were, he couldn't handle them now. Grandpa Bates is still his Grandpa Bates. No matter what, during the years on the ranch, Bates has always treated him as a family member. After thinking about this clearly, Lauren was no longer troubled. The sky emits pure light, which reflects on the white snow and illuminates people's hearts. This is an interesting world. Maybe he will come into contact with extraordinary people and things in the future, and he will become an extraordinary person. The plot in Lauren's mind transitioned from vampire hunter to DC Marvel, and her mood became more cheerful. In the afternoon, Bates dragged his tired body down the mountain. "Grandpa, you're back." Lauren saw him from afar. Bates looked at the grown-up child in front of him, sighing, and all kinds of strange emotions suddenly came up and stuck in his mouth. Bates recalled that the child was just like a kitten when he first arrived. Now he is 10 years old and can go up the mountain alone. When he walked out of the cave, he saw the traces left by Lauren. The shelter was well built, but there was no fire. Bates was a little relieved, but also a little worried. He didn't know how much had been discovered. There were some things that Bates wanted to keep in the coffin, but he still underestimated the wisdom of a child. He was thinking about how to speak and where to start. "I cooked mutton, stewed potatoes, and macaroni." Lauren didn't pay attention to Bates' unusual look. Bates sighed in relief. What a diligent young man. He planned to enjoy this meal first, after all, he was still very weak. After swallowing the last piece of lamb chop, Bates sighed with satisfaction. "Even if it's the same dish, your cooking is always much better than mine." Lauren raised his eyebrows. "This is a talent." The two chatted and laughed, put away the tableware, and sat on the doorstep. Watching the moonlight pouring down from the mountains, covering the white snow clothes of the mountains with a layer of silver gauze. "Are you interested in listening to an old man tell a story?" There was relief in the old man's voice. "Experience is wisdom," Lauren replied. 40 years ago, when I was a young boy. Bates participated in World War II when he was young. Although it was not a frontal battlefield, it was equally dangerous. While escorting supplies back, I encountered a small group of elite enemy troops in the mountains. A squadron chased them around, and eventually Bates's squad became separated from the main force. They walked deeper and deeper into the mountains in the general direction of their return, and the pursuers followed them more and more closely. We broke into a wooden house in the mountains. It was a bit similar to ours, but much bigger. Bates looked back at his house, and for a moment he seemed to see the recruit team from 40 years ago. In addition to normal daily items in the wooden house, there is a room built like a cage. There was a middle-aged woman lying in the cage. The cell door was closed and there were 3 or 4 football-sized iron locks hanging on it, as if the woman was some extremely terrifying beast. The key was on the ground not far from the cell door. They opened the cell door and woke the woman. The woman told them that she was a legendary werewolf who would turn into a werewolf every full moon night, lose her mind, and live in the mountains all the time. "The moon is full again tonight, so lock yourself up in advance." After saying this, the woman ordered several people to leave as soon as possible. The young recruits are full of novel ideas. If they become werewolves, wouldn't they be able to stand out from the encirclement? 3 people in the group agreed with the idea, and the others did not want to abandon their beliefs and fall into the embrace of darkness. With the holy light in his heart, young Bates left the cabin with a few people who had firm beliefs. The other 3 wanted to take a gamble. They sprinkled the woman's saliva on the wound and waited in the house for the enemy and night. "Next, why did you become a werewolf?" Lauren asked. "That's how fate is. He never develops in the direction that is preset by others." Bates lamented. The 3 recruits turned into werewolves and quickly killed all the chasing enemies, and also followed the scent to catch up with their compatriots. "I watched wild beasts tear my comrades into pieces, and the moonlight that night was like blood." Bates covered his face and his voice was whimpering. The moon finally sets, and Bates is slightly injured but lucky enough to survive. The 3 werewolf comrades woke up and could not accept their actions, so they committed suicide by drinking bullets. Later, Bates noticed bite marks on his arm while tending to the wound. I returned to the UK with their suicide notes, great panic, and their expectations for their families. After handling the funeral affairs of his comrades, Bates originally wanted to return to his hometown and spend the rest of his days in peace. As he passed through this small town, he was about to spend the night of the first full moon since being bitten. Ignoring the residents' advice, Bates went up the mountain alone and walked for several hours into the depths of the mountain. When I woke up in the morning, I was near the address of this cabin. The forest was messed up by me, and some animals were torn into pieces by me. There was blood everywhere. Bates' old voice slowly spoke of the cruel scene. Lauren knew this was the origin of the rumors at Yamashita. Bates settled here, not daring to marry or go home, and his family thought he had died on the battlefield. Chapter 6. For decades, what has sustained me is the belief in taking care of the relatives and friends of my comrades. I have a farm in Scotland and give the rent to them every year. I have always felt that this is my responsibility, the meaning of my life. I was the only one who came back alive, so I should shoulder the responsibility. Year after year, people I have never met gradually pass away, but I am still alive. The widow of my last comrade passed away, and I no longer have any nostalgia for this world. That day, the mayor suddenly came to tell me that I still have a distant grandnephew who needs to be taken care of. It's you. They said that you have encountered misfortune and need a shelter. I agreed, and they sent you here within a few days. That afternoon, I looked at that boy. His clothes were in tatters, his feet were bare, and he was covered in mud. You know everything that happens next. Lauren listened to Bates talk about his past experiences, and his heart was ironed to perfection. But looking at his pale beard and deep wrinkles, I suddenly felt some pity. Because of an accident, this old man has been burdened with sin all his life and lives alone, far away from people. He should have enjoyed honors, but he was lonely all his life. Lauren didn't know how to comfort him, so he patted Bates on the shoulder. Thank you. Bates said no more, and the two of them just stared at the wilderness until late at night. Lauren didn't mention the werewolf thing again in the following days. He was also curious about whether werewolves were afraid of silver bullets, whether they were invulnerable, and whether they could eat raw meat. But every time I looked at Bates's beard and wrinkles, I never mentioned it again. In this way, Bates occasionally taught some fighting skills and reconnaissance skills learned in the army, and lived an ordinary life at other times. Lauren flipped through the two strange books again and again, trying to figure out what kind of world this was. Was it Nico Flamel himself who sold him the book, or was it someone else? If he thought about it more, he would feel that the name Nico Flamel was a bit familiar, maybe he had heard of it in his previous life. But there is still no answer. Ordinary days continued until 1991, when Lauren turned 11 years old. The mountains are much cooler in summer than other places, and the pasture tastes good. Goats are scattered on the hillside. Lauren is leaning on a stone with a book and reading. He had read the travel notes in the latter part of an introduction to hieroglyphs many times, but there were no other diversions during the days on the mountain. Peter no longer worked as a sheep herder and went to the city. At first he wanted to study, but later he heard that he was learning to repair cars with his uncle. The current shepherd was Lauren, and Bates had said that he would be sent to a boarding school in the city for a few years to attend public school. Lauren had no other plans, and he had no objection to this arrangement. There was a commotion from the sheep, and Lauren looked up and saw a grey-brown owl flying unsteadily over. Are there owls in the mountains here? Lauren was a little confused, he had never seen it before. As it neared, Lauren watched the owl fly over, clutching a letter in its talons. This strong sense of déjà vu reminded him of something, and his eyes widened as he watched the owl getting closer and closer. The owl landed in front of him, put the letter in his hand, and then stared at him with its round eyes. Lauren hurriedly took out a piece of cheese from his bag and handed it over. The owl flapped its wings, nuzzled Lauren's hand with its small beak, and held the cheese in its mouth. The pure and fragrant goat cheese is made by Lauren himself. Lauren Morgan swears he actually saw surprise in the owl's eyes. Ignoring the owl, Lauren opened the letter eagerly, looking at the big H and logo in the middle of the envelope and the animals surrounding it. In the middle of the first page it says, Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Headmaster, Albus Dumbledore. President of the International Federation of Wizards, First Class of the Order of Merlin, Archmage and Chief Magician of the Wizengamot. This is followed by the main text. Dear Mr. Morgan, we are pleased to inform you that you have been admitted to Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Attached is a list of required secretaries and equipment. The semester is scheduled to begin on September 1st. We will be waiting for your owl to bring your reply before July 31st. Vice Principal, female. Sincerely, Minerva McGonagall. The second page contains new items, including uniform. First year students need 1 3-sided plain work robe, black. 2 a plain pointed hat, black, worn during the day. 3 a pair of protective gloves, made of fire dragon leather or similar materials. 4 a winter cloak, black, silver buckle. Please note, all student clothing must have name tags. Textbook. All students need to prepare the following books. Standard Spells, Elementary, by Miranda Gorshak. A History of Magic, by Bathilda Bagshot. The Theory of Magic, by Adab Wolfling. The Beginner's Guide to Transfiguration, by Emmerich Switch. A Thousand Miracle Herbs and Mushrooms, by Phil Lidispar. Magic Potions and Potions, by Arsene Geiger. Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, by Newt Scamander. Dark Arts, A Guide to Self-Defense, by Quentin Trimble. Other equipment. A magic wand. A crucible, made of pewter, standard size No. 2. A set of glass or crystal vials. A telescope. A brass balance. Students may bring an owl or a cat or a toad. Parents are particularly reminded that first-year students are not allowed to bring their own broomsticks. Lauren's hands trembled as he unfolded the letter. This is not the UK in the 1980s, this is the wizarding world of Harry Potter. He had always planned to go to famous places to make money when he was older, such as Wall Street and Silicon Valley. But what happened to Grandpa Bates kept reminding him that this was not a normal world. Lauren always had trepidation about his future imagination. He might go on living his life step by step, and he might come into contact with some extraordinary things, but he could never feel at ease. Now, the world has never been so clear to Lauren. He spent the whole afternoon carefully looking at the letter, its printing, ink, and pen. He looked over it over and over again, and it seemed that he never got tired of it. Finally, it was getting dark. With an excited heart, Lauren drove the sheep down the mountain to the residence, and then rushed towards the cabin. Grandpa Bates. I have a great thing for you. Lauren handed the letter to Bates, who was building a new chair. Bates looked at the uncontrollable smile on Lauren's face, and then looked at the delicate letter. He rubbed his hands on his clothes a few times before picking up the letter. It didn't take long for Bates to finish reading the letter. Are you sure this strange magic academy is not a liar? Bates didn't doubt the existence of magic. After all, he was a werewolf, but he was afraid that this was some new scam. Probably not. Lauren was naturally aware of the situation, but he didn't know how to explain this scene to Bates. Just as the two of them were going back and forth over the letter, a middle-aged woman wearing a black skirt and black square-rimmed glasses walked up the side of the road. She had a serious expression and a neat step. This was not a normal situation. Walking up from the bottom of the mountain, Bates could notice the figure in the mountain half an hour in advance. This person did not go up the mountain normally. Bates studied the woman. Sorry, the other student was too enthusiastic and delayed us for a while. The visitor first explained the situation. I am the vice principal of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, Minerva McGonagall. Next, Professor McGonagall introduced the basic situation of Hogwarts to Bates and Lauren. Bates was suspicious at first, but Professor McGonagall turned the wood on the ground into a group of tabby cats, circling around him. No one would suspect a group of cats meowing around you, and Bates finally came to believe this reality. Bates and Lauren were in complicated moods and didn't say much. Professor McGonagall made an appointment with the two of them to take Lauren to Diagon Alley tomorrow to buy items for the start of school, and left soon after. Chapter 7. During dinner that evening, Bates was somewhat silent. He had known that the world was not as simple as ordinary people saw it, but when the magical curtain lifted a corner towards him, he was still strongly shocked. Whether the wizard is related to the werewolf, and whether the wizard can cure his troublesome ailments. All these questions were like cats turned from wood during the day, surrounding his heart and scratching his brain constantly. Bates almost reveals his feelings to Professor McGonagall, but calms down when he hears that magic is a talent and only the chosen ones can become wizards. He didn't dare to tell the fact that he was a werewolf. Perhaps this was an unforgivable creature in the eyes of wizards. In addition to the unknown danger, there is also the possibility of affecting little Lauren. The old man felt that he had lived enough, even if he died, it would be nothing, but little Lauren had an extraordinary future. He believed that little Lauren would achieve great things, and he didn't want to be a drag or bring any bad influence to him. After Bates came back from the war, he has been living for others. Responsibility and obligation support him, so that he does not have to think about what kind of monster he is and when he should make atonement to God. Also manipulating him, for decades he was a machine called Bates rather than a real person. Lauren's arrival made him feel truly alive. Taking care of a child is not an easy task, but Lauren is smarter than any child he has ever seen. A little older and Lauren can make delicious food on her own. Every time he swallowed those hot things, he could feel that he was truly alive. Bates didn't say much. He didn't want Lauren to bother doing something for him. If the werewolf is nothing to the wizard, Lauren will solve it himself. If the werewolf is also a trouble to the wizard, he does not want to bring any pressure to Lauren. Lauren on the other side didn't feel Bates's low mood at all. He was sorting out his thoughts. In this world, there are owls that deliver admission letters and Professor McGonagall who teaches transfiguration. It is absolutely certain that this is the magical world in the Harry Potter movie series. The world seemed to have taken off its mysterious veil, and its face was clearly displayed before his eyes. Lauren has watched all 8 movies and knows the plot of the story. Judging by the year, he should be in the same class as Harry Potter. In the next few years, the villain Voldemort will enter Hogwarts and cause trouble. Principal Dumbledore would guide the growth of Harry's protagonist group while taking time to eliminate the boss's 7 Horcruxes one by one. Finally, he felt tired and lay down after Voldemort's arrangements were clear. Overall, as a children's fantasy movie, it shouldn't be difficult for him to survive to the finale at Hogwarts as long as he studies peacefully at school. Speaking of myself, Grandpa Bates's werewolf is the same model as Lupin from the wizarding world. This kind of werewolf is more like a disease. It will transform uncontrollably on the night of the full moon, seriously affecting people's normal life. There is a corresponding special medicine wolfsbane potion in the magic world, and potions Professor Snape can make it. You can buy it from him when the time comes, and you can even learn how to make it. If he dreams bigger, maybe he can study hard and find a way to completely eliminate werewolves. And that weird bookseller and those 2 weird books. General interpretation of hieroglyphics should be about some alchemy content. Nico Flamel appeared as a tool man in the original storyline. According to the autobiography, the Book of Abraham is the book that records the refining of the magic stone. Lauren paid a lot of attention to both books. As for whether the person he met that day was Nico Flamel himself, Lauren was not sure. It didn't matter. He felt extremely at ease now. You know the development of the plot, you have a clear future plan, and you don't need to make a living in the magical world. He is familiar with the development of the world and plans to return to the world of ordinary people after graduation to start a small business, make money, and enjoy life. Now he just needs to grow up step by step, Lauren thought to himself. There has never been such a wonderful start. Coco. Bates looked at Lauren covering his mouth and shrugging his shoulders strangely. He was not sure what extraordinary achievements this man could achieve. In the early morning, Lauren and Bates sat neatly on the stools after finishing breakfast. The wait seemed long, and Bates looked a little embarrassed. He hadn't entertained guests in decades. Fortunately, he didn't wait too long. Lauren, who was sitting on the stool, suddenly turned his head to look at an open space. Bates was a little confused and followed Lauren's line of sight. Professor McGonagall suddenly appeared with a pop. Watching this magical scene, Bates was even more shocked than watching wood turn into cats yesterday. Professor McGonagall suddenly appeared and looked directly into Lauren's eyes, and she saw shadows floating in her blue eyes. "Did you know in advance that I would show up from here?" Mag's tone was somewhat surprising. "I just saw that there seemed to be some changes in that area." Lauren was a little confused. Couldn't other wizards see the landing point of the teleportation? This was never mentioned in the movie. This is an extraordinary talent. Professor McGonagall wanted to explain, but suddenly remembered something and stopped talking. "Come on, we have a lot to do." Professor McGonagall stretched out her hand, took Lauren's hand, and said goodbye to Mr. Bates. "Apparition!" snapped. Lauren felt as if Professor McGonagall's hand was about to slip out of his, and he quickly tightened his grip. There was darkness in front of him. He was squeezed hard from all directions and couldn't breathe. His chest seemed to be tightly tightened by several iron hoops. Snapped. Lauren couldn't stop coughing, and tears and runny nose almost flowed out. He felt as if he had just been squeezed out of a very narrow rubber tube. Joining the wizarding world was not as easy as he thought. Normally it would be easier if we hurried, but today we need to rush. Professor McGonagall gently stroked Lauren's back while comforting her gently. Lauren soon calmed down and felt that Professor McGonagall was not as harsh as he thought. The house in front of him was a suburban house. It was much better than the log cabin where Lauren lived, and it was cleaner than the orphanage that had been blurred in his memory. This was almost the house he had ever seen that most closely matched the impression of a British city in the 1980s. There is another student with you. Professor McGonagall walked forward and rang the doorbell. Soon, a young couple came out with a girl about the same size as Lauren. In Lauren's opinion, the young couple looked like typical white people, with nothing special about them. The little girl has thick brown but somewhat disheveled hair. It can be seen that it has been carefully taken care of, but to no avail. The brown eyes were round and bright, and he saw Professor McGonagall grinning happily, showing her slightly larger front teeth, which was very cute. Seeing the familiar appearance, Lauren was a little surprised. Did he meet Hermione on the first day? While Lauren was thinking wildly, Professor McGonagall had already completed negotiations with the Grangers and walked out with the little girl in hand. Chapter 8. Hello, I'm Hermione Granger. The little girl reached out to Lauren. Hello, I'm Lauren Morgan. Lauren shook his hand twice. He felt that it was a bit prudish for two children to perform such social etiquette. Are you also the chosen freshman? The girl is now very curious about everything related to wizards. She was so excited last night that she almost couldn't sleep. Lauren's thoughts were still wandering, and the little girl wanted to ask something else. We'll talk later, now we're going to the Leaky Cauldron. Professor McGonagall interrupted them, holding the two of them with her left hand and waving her wand with her right hand. Apparition! Snapped. Lauren felt much better the second time than the first time, and the time she was squeezed in the tube was much shorter. Maybe it's because I'm getting used to it, or maybe it's because the distance is a little closer this time. The lively little girl on the other side burst into tears. But before Professor McGonagall could comfort him, a whimpering voice sounded first. Was that also a kind of magic just now? Is the spell apparition? Can we learn from it in the future? After 3 consecutive questions, the little girl took a deep breath, calmed down, and looked directly at Professor McGonagall with bright eyes. Professor McGonagall and Lauren next to them fell silent for a moment. Lauren asked if he wanted to join the queue at this time, showing due curiosity about the magical world. Professor McGonagall was stunned for a moment, and then said, "You will know this after you enter school. Now I will show you how to get from the Muggle world to Diagon Alley. You will have to do it yourself in the next school year." Lauren and Hermione then looked up and looked around. In front of them was a dirty, dilapidated small bar, with black stains on the outer wall. It seems like no one passing by can see this bar. Professor McGonagall led them through the bar, which was even more dark and dirty. The people inside were also dressed very strangely, some were wearing top hats, and some had their clothes trailing on the ground. They looked at Hermione's jeans and plaid jacket, which seemed very attractive. Lauren was wearing clothes made by a tailor in a small town. He looked a bit old-fashioned on the street outside, but the people inside the bar seemed to think it was normal. Being looked at with offensive looks, Hermione looked uncomfortable and frowned tightly, but she didn't speak. When passing by the bar owner waved to say hello to Professor McGonagall. Professor McGonagall pursed her lips without saying much, and led them to a small courtyard with walls on all sides. There was nothing here except trash cans and weeds. Just count the wall tiles on the trash can 3 upwards and 2 across the bin, and tap the wall 3 times with the wand, and then... Professor McGonagall said as she demonstrated. The brick shook, and a small hole appeared from it. Finally, the hole turned into an archway leading to another magical world. Welcome to Diagon Alley. There was a trace of pride in Professor McGonagall's tone. Even though she had to repeat this behavior many times every year, she was never impatient. Unveiling the curtain of the magical world to a young wizard is a joyful job. As I walked along the archway, I heard a rumbling sound behind me. Hermione and Lauren looked back and saw that the archway had turned into an ordinary wall again. Along the way, I saw all kinds of strange shops, selling owls, crucibles, and strange-shaped brooms, but I didn't stop at any of them. Professor McGonagall, why do wizards use owls to deliver messages? Professor McGonagall, why are the crucibles made of different materials and models? Professor McGonagall, why can a broomstick fly? Does it have an engine? What is the power? Hermione was a little nervous, and she kept asking questions. Children are always a little afraid when going to strange places. Their curiosity is not only a way to relieve their inner emotions. Professor McGonagall would answer questions at first, but Hermione kept asking questions one after another, always adding why. Finally, Professor McGonagall said, "Some questions will be answered after you enroll, and some questions you have to find the answers yourself." Hermione stopped then and turned her attention to the little friend next to her. Lauren was looking at the shops and pedestrians on the street with interest, connecting what he saw in front of him with the memories of his previous life. "Lauren, why don't you ask anything? Are you not curious at all?" Hermione asked Lauren. Lauren looked at the little girl in front of her, her eyes were really bright. "Hermione, do you know? I live on a ranch and have 2 talking kittens. One is very cute, and the other is not very pretty." "Oh, is that also a wizard's pet? I thought you were a child of a Muggle family like me." Hermione quickly added the question. She already knew through Professor McGonagall that Muggle was the wizard's name for ordinary people. Professor McGonagall also noticed what Lauren said, "A talking cat? She hasn't raised one yet, why didn't she see it when she went to Lauren's house before?" The not-so-good-looking one kept asking why, and then it was given away. Lauren said seriously, holding back a smile. Professor McGonagall had already realized when she saw Lauren's expression that he was talking nonsense. "Ah? Why, because it's not cute. Do you have any other cats that you can give to me? Even if they are not so cute?" Hermione was still immersed in the cute talking kitten, and then added, "Even if you can't speak, it's okay." Lauren couldn't hold it anymore, because cute cats don't always ask why. After saying this, Lauren laughed out loud. Professor McGonagall also looked amused. Hermione blinked, stunned for a moment, and finally reacted, "That's bad. You're teasing me." She slapped Lauren's shoulder with her hand, but not very hard. "Just kidding." Lauren laughed and apologized. When passing by Flourish and Blott's bookstore, Hermione's eyes showed visible excitement. She was eager to go in right away and rummage through the books to find the answers to all her questions, but Professor McGonagall didn't stop. "The currency used by wizards is different from the Muggle world. We have to go to Gringotts first to exchange for some wizard currency," Professor McGonagall explained. After discussing the surrounding shops, several people finally arrived at their destination. This is a snow-white building, taller than other shops around it, with a shiny bronze door. Standing in front of the door were goblin waiters in scarlet and gold uniforms. They were about less than half the height of normal adults, a head shorter than Lauren, but their hands and feet were very long. When they entered, the goblin waiter bowed to them. Then a second silver door appeared, with the words engraved on it, "Please come in, stranger, but you have to be careful about what will happen if you are greedy. If you blindly ask for something for nothing, you will be punished the most severely. Therefore, if you want to get something from our underground vault, take a treasure that was never yours, and you have been warned, O thief, that you will be rewarded not with treasure but with retribution." Inside is a marble hall. On a long row of counters, hundreds of goblin employees are sitting on high benches and conducting various businesses. Some are weighing coins with copper scales, and some are inspecting gems. There are countless doors in the hall, leading to different places. The goblin leads people to shuttle directly back and forth through these doors. With the help of Professor McGonagall, Lauren and Hermione exchanged pounds for Wizarding World currency. Through the goblin's introduction and Professor McGonagall's supplement, the two learned some basic information. Muggle currency is exchanged for Wizarding currency, mainly gold galleons, which are exclusive to students from Muggle families at Hogwarts. Each transaction will be specially registered, and if it exceeds a certain amount, you will be asked about the situation. However, there is almost no restriction on the exchange of gold galleons for Muggle currency. This is considering that some wizards will live in the Muggle world and have this demand. Of course, wizards must have ways to obtain Muggle currency without exchanging it, but most of these would violate the statute of secrecy. In addition, Lauren discovered that the wizard's currency system was very crude. Even though Muggle currency exchange gold galleons were specially registered and calculated, gold could still be exchanged without restrictions. Based on this alone, Lauren can directly destroy the wizarding economy, and let them eat bread for 500,000 marks, no, galleons. But a crude system also means rogues, and the goblins of Gringotts have the highest authority to explain. Currency does not have any financial attributes. How much is made and how much is issued is decided by the goblin. If Lauren attacks them with financial means, the result will be nothing more than the goblins issuing rogue statements and rewriting the rules. Using price means to impact will not yield much gains because the market is too small. Unless the wizard can be made to sign some kind of labor contract, but this is unrealistic, because he will be hung up and chewed on. In addition, Lauren said he was very uncomfortable with the strange exchange rates of 1 galleon for 17 sequos and 1 sequo for 29 nat. Number 1 in the world in decimal system. No, Java is number 1. Chapter 9. The two of them took out the pounds prepared by their parents and exchanged them for wizard currency. The amount was enough gold galleons for the first grade according to Professor McGonagall. Wrapped in 2 small cloth bags, they were carried in the hands of Lauren and Hermione. The detailed exchange rates between the two made Lauren feel dizzy. Regarding the odd and prime numbers mentioned by the goblin, Lauren wanted to blow his head off with an abacus. The two of them were so groggy that they followed Professor McGonagall to Madame Malkin's robe store to buy robes, and then walked for a while to buy stationery. Finally arrived at Flourish and Blott's bookstore, which Hermione had longed for. Professor McGonagall went to pack 2 first-year books while Lauren and Hermione looked around. The books here are irregular in shape, with large ones like paving floors and small ones about the size of postage stamps. It was hard for Lauren to imagine how they were printed in batches. Some books even had warning signs on the front to prevent accidental touching. Lauren flipped through and selected some. The follow-up series of standard spells, Curse and Counter Curse, Wandering with Werewolves and Alchemy, from beginner to mastery were no longer selected. He was not sure if he could read them all. Hermione selected a large number of books that could help her understand the wizarding world and Hogwarts, such as Important Magical Events of the 20th Century, Modern Magical History, The Rise and Fall of Dark Magic, Hogwarts, A School History, etc. Lauren felt that the title of this kind of book would make her lose her hair. He looked at Hermione's thick curly hair and didn't dare to speak too loudly. Hermione noticed something was wrong in Lauren's eyes, and looked at the books Lauren had chosen. She frowned and persuaded, "We should first understand the magical world so that we can better adapt and integrate. I think these books are very good. A great preschool reading book, especially for Muggle families like ours." Seeing that Lauren was unmoved, he added, "The book you chose seems not suitable for new students. We should know more before studying in depth." Lauren didn't have time to reply. He had a headache seeing Hermione chattering incessantly, but Hermione was indeed concerned. Lauren decided to be more tactful, "Let's choose different books. You can lend them to me after reading them. This way we can save some and buy more books." Hermione was convinced, "Then let's write letters to communicate." Okay. The atmosphere became harmonious, and the two of them were eager to try the books marked with dangers. However, they were deterred after seeing a guest being chased and bitten by a book. Buy the cauldron and walk down the street. When passing by the drug store, I saw the expensive materials inside, including a horn made of bison horn that cost 21 galleons, and a chromantula venom that cost 100 galleons a portion. Lauren felt that if he went to Hogwarts and established a good relationship with Hagrid, he would not be short of money at all. Walking further back, we finally came to Ollivander's Wand Shop, an equipment store in the wizarding community's novice village. This is a shabby and small shop, and the gold sign on the door has fallen off. When you walk in, you will find a very small shop with benches and thousands of cardboard boxes almost reaching the ceiling. Ollivander is an old man with silver-white eyes, like the moon. Lauren saw him walking slowly over, greeted Professor McGonagall, and then looked at himself and Hermione. The old man circled Lauren and Hermione several times, and finally laid his eyes on Hermione. Oh, the distinctive characteristics are almost overflowing. Beyond ordinary people's foresight, sensitivity, and a little bit of madness in the entanglement. Come here, little girl, your wand is impatient. There was a hint of fear in Hermione's eyes, but she still followed Ollivander's instructions and took a step towards the stacked cardboard boxes. As she advanced, a small box began to tremble. Ollivander stretched out his hand, and the carton flew straight into his hand. Ollivander opened the box and took out a wand, 10 3/4 inches, grapevine wood with dragon nerves. The nerves of the dragon will allow you to learn magic more quickly. Grapevine wood was used by the Celts to represent the 10th tree moon. The owner of a wand made of this material always has lofty goals and will also achieve extraordinary results, but it's going to be a little bumpy. The wand has a strong reaction when you first come in, so we can skip some steps. Hermione took the wand, and the tip of the wand suddenly emitted a warm and soft light, and the little witch also smiled brightly. I knew that was the case. Remember that the wand chooses the wizard, not the wizard choosing the wand. Ollivander also looked satisfied. It was Lauren's turn. Ollivander took out a long tape measure with silver scales from his pocket. After asking Lauren's usual hand, he began to measure. From shoulders to fingertips, from wrists to elbows, shoulders to the floor, knees to armpits, and even around the head. Measure and introduce. Ollivanders has been making wands since 382 BC. After generations of hard work, we finally identified 3 super powerful magical substances: unicorn hair, phoenix tail feathers and dragon nerves. It has stable and unique properties, which are fundamentally different from those wild wands outside. As he spoke, Ollivander loosened his hands, but the tape measure was still measuring Lauren's body. After Ollivander brought over a pile of long paper boxes, the tape measure automatically fell to the ground and rolled up into a ball. Hermione looked at the tape measure with bright eyes. Try this one made of maple, unicorn hair, 7 inches long. Ollivander handed over a wand. Lauren took the wand, but Ollivander took it back before he could wave it. A similar situation repeated twice. Lauren narrowed his eyes. Damn it, why should I be tortured like this when a hot woman can do it all in one step? Professor McGonagall waited patiently, while Hermione was a little worried. Although this friend she had just met had a bad character, she still hoped that they could enroll in Hogwarts together. Finally Ollivander turned his back and took out another black wand. Oh, apple wood, phoenix tail feathers, exactly 10 inches. Lauren squeezed the wand and felt a sense of security in her heart. She waved the wand and a soft wind blew through the entire store. Both of them showed a satisfied smile, and Ollivander continued, Applewood is suitable for wizards with lofty ideals. They are always good at dueling, and most of them live very long. Phoenix tail feathers are very picky, and they always have a lot of personality, but when encountering with a recognized owner, extraordinary potential will be unleashed. Each wand cost 7 galleons. After paying the money, they went shopping again. Lauren bought an owl with one eye to send letters. It looked a bit silly, but Lauren thought it was very cute. On the way back, Professor McGonagall stopped the two of them from waving their wands randomly many times. He also warned them that magic is a very dangerous thing. Except for some spells marked as safe, they should not cast them easily at home. Someone once chanted the wrong spell and summoned a bison to stand on his chest. Once enrolled they learn how to cast spells correctly. The two of them listened, and it was unclear how much they would take in. Remember to write to me. Hermione waved and jumped to her parents, eager to share what she had seen today. Lauren once again experienced the feeling of being stuffed into a rubber tube and squeezed out. After getting the ticket, saying goodbye to Professor McGonagall again, and watching her disappear again with a pop, Lauren felt that the professorship at Hogwarts was not that easy. Only when he got home did he remember that he had forgotten to ask Professor McGonagall why other young wizards could not detect the landing point of the apparition, but he could see it, and what his extraordinary talent was. But Lauren wasn't too entangled, since the days ahead were still long anyway, and magic was more surprising than he thought. Chapter 10. After returning from Diagon Alley, Lauren read the textbook several times and began to try some absolutely safe spells. In the case Professor McGonagall talked about, a man almost lost his life when he made a mistake of just one letter while reciting a spell. No matter how big his heart, Lauren would not dare to try such a spell easily. The introductory part of Standard Spells, Elementary lists some spells that are absolutely safe and will not cause any irreparable consequences if you talk about them to the sky. Lauren is familiar with Daisies, Sweet Cream, and Sunshine. I will note later that this magic can paint some items with a layer of yellow similar to Daisies and Sunshine. The hare's eyes are gliding, the harp is faint, and the clear water turns into fine wine. The clear water can add the smell and taste of the wine. The others are similar combinations of short sentences, and they are all household magic with little effect. From the format, it can be seen that this spell is very different from the more rigorous Repair as Original and Fluorescent Blink later on. The magic world divides spells into 4 major categories: transformation spells, magic spells, breaking spells, and healing spells. In Standard Spells, Elementary, author Miranda Gorshak mentioned that a spell adds specific properties to an object and makes the object do something, rather than making the object become something. The latter is the category of transfiguration spells. There are only 9 spells formally taught in the first grade textbooks, namely the softening spell, the cutting spell, the levitating spell, the repairing spell, the lockpicking spell, the locking spell, the illuminating spell, the repel spell and the fire-making spell. They are all relatively basic spells, used to get young wizards started. The book not only contains spellcasting methods, but also mentions the evolution of the 9 spells, the era and environment in which the inventor lived. For example, the lockpicking curse Alajo Cave Open, which originally meant friendly to thieves, was brought back from Africa by a British wizard. He later became a famous thief as he wished, and directly contributed to the invention of the anti-lockpicking curse. Prior to this, the more popular lockpicking spells were Open the Door, which literally means blowing a big hole in the door, and the earlier and cruder Open Sesame. Most of the spells evolved from Latin, and Lauren could vaguely get a glimpse of the rules of the spells from the origin and evolution of these spells. After reading through the textbook, Talon began to try casting spells. They live in the mountains, far away from the residents of the town, so they don't have to deliberately find a place, but Lauren's favorite place is still by the small lake. The first thing to try is repair a new. Lauren tore a 5-pound note into 5 pieces and placed them on a stone, then cast a spell on one of them in an attempt to conjure 5 notes. The idea was very interesting, but it failed. The piece of banknote that the wand pressed against seemed to have some attraction, pulling the other 4 pieces over and restoring them to complete banknotes. There were still some obvious marks in the joints. After trying it, apart from regretting that he couldn't get rich by doing this, Lauren also had a feeling that the intonation of the final sound of a certain word should be raised a little higher. After adjusting it, he found that it would be easier to cast the spell. After repeatedly casting the spell with the adjusted tone a few times, when waving the wand, you will feel that it should be better to raise your little finger. After trying this idea several times, the banknotes finally recovered were almost intact, with no trace of the joints. This seems to be something similar to magical intuition. Intuition is a word he learned in his previous life. The logic of normal people is A equals B, B equals C, so it can be concluded that A equals C, and some people with intuition can it directly follows that A equals C. In other words, it is proficiency. With repeated practice, you can clearly feel the improvement. Lauren is not sure whether this is the body's own magical talent or the golden finger of the time traveler. Every time he made a little progress, Lauren would feel a huge difference after a while. Of course, this built-in correction seems to be overridden after reaching a certain level of proficiency. At the beginning, Lauren's floating spell needed to be expressive and his movements elegant and rhythmic. Later, even if he chanted the spell bluntly and waved the wand straight, he could still achieve good results. Lauren loved the magic spell Opening the Door. Although the textbook did not talk about how to release this spell, and the main teaching was the more subtle opening the Alajo hole, but he loved the effect of the explosive hole. He started trying it again and again, and his instincts took effect. After adjusting his tone and posture, the wand also emitted light, but it had no effect. There was no reaction at all when the red light hit the stone. During dinner in the evening, Lauren had an idea and shot at the door of the cabin. As the child's clear voice said "door opens," a big hole opened in the wooden door that had been in service for who knows how many years. After a whole day of correction, Lauren's spell casting was so effective that it made Bates so angry that he almost turned into a werewolf on the spot. In the end, Bates' anger subsided when Lauren agreed to take over the kitchen duties until school started on September 1st. The matter did not end here. From this, Lauren realized that the conditions for opening the door really required a door, and his exploration began. At first, a simple door was built in the open space with wood, and then it was easily blown open. Switching to the cave where Bates was hiding on a full moon night, he used a magic spell to bombard the boulder at the entrance of the cave. At first, only a small black spot could be broken out on the stone. After Lauren's unremitting efforts, one sunny morning, he blasted through the boulder. There was an explosion, and a football-sized hole opened in the center of the boulder. Black, as if exploded with gunpowder. Lauren looked at this scene and felt satisfied. After that, Lauren seemed to have awakened. He regarded the bombardment target as a door blocking his entry, and then kept opening the door. In the UK in the 1990s, Lauren felt the simple and pure joy of kicking during the Chinese New Year in his previous life. With continuous practice, Lauren's door opens was corrected into a weird spell. The spell should not be the original door opens, but the pronunciation is strange and a little unclear. He didn't know what to call it a curse now, but happiness was all. The rocks and trees on the mountain suffered. The roaring sounds continued, and the scene Bates saw when he came up was even worse than when he was transforming into a werewolf. Facing the wizard's destructive power, Bates was frightened. This is just an 11-year-old child who has not yet entered school, and he is already an RPG with unlimited ammunition. It is even more unimaginable for an adult wizard. Fortunately, Lauren did not use the spell on the animals, and Bates felt relieved. He was still just a child. Although he was a little naughty, he was still kind. This view lasted less than 2 days. Lauren began to fry the fish. Bates calculated in his mind that the fish he caught in one afternoon would be more than the two of them could eat in a week. In the end, he couldn't help but beat Lauren, and took the fish down the mountain to sell it. At night, Lauren leaned on the stool and felt aggrieved, but he did not dare to say it. Frying fish is fun, but I can't fry it anymore. I rolled my silly eyes in frustration, thinking about what to write to Hermione, but finally gave up. I can't say that I've been playing with it for almost a month. I was about to let go of the spectacled owl and let it go find food on its own. It has been like this these days. Little Hannon's life in the mountains was quite satisfying, but the feathers felt so good that Lauren was a little bit excited and kept stroking the owl with his hands. The little spectacled owl blinked its eyes, and the white stripes on its face danced. Mao felt aggrieved, but Mao couldn't say anything. In addition, Lauren read the book Wandering with Werewolves during this time. Apart from the heroic figure and perfect smile of the brainwashed Lockhart, the kind with pictures, yes, beautifully illustrated, a little knowledge about werewolves is of little help to Grandpa Bates. Alchemy, from beginner to mastery, took less than 5 minutes from Lauren opening the book to putting it on the bottom of the box. And I decided to open it at least after school starts. It requires too much prerequisite knowledge. It's not an introduction at all, it's a tacit understanding that you have mastered several knowledge about magic and potions before starting to learn alchemy, which is outrageous. Chapter 11. At the end of August, Lauren slowly finished chewing through the first grade textbook he had brought back. He read the subsequent standard spell as a storybook and did not dare to try to practice it easily. Bates also got used to Lauren, who was a bit crazy about practicing magic. Many household chores at home were replaced by Lauren with safe housework spells. He didn't know what to do all day long, pulling his beard, clenching his teeth and sipping the wine Lauren conjured with water. Finally, Bates couldn't stand it anymore. They packed their luggage, entrusted the sheep to the mayor, and set off for London a few days in advance. With a few days of free time, Lauren wanted to visit Harry in advance or meet Hermione. But he really couldn't remember their addresses. Harry seemed to live on Privet Drive, but he had no idea where Privet Drive was. The Grangers ran a dental practice, but he didn't know where it was. Perhaps the little spectacled owl could be used to deliver a message to Hermione, with him following behind. But this was too silly, so Lauren chose to give up, since school was about to start anyway. Bates walked on the bustling street again. The last time he saw such a scene was decades ago. London is no longer the London it was a few decades ago. It feels like a world away. Bates wandered around for a few days, secretly making a decision that only he knew, without revealing anything to Lauren. The two played happily for a few days and bought a lot of clothes. Bates always believed that even if wizarding schools have uniforms, it is always better to have more sets of inner linings. In winter, there should be winter clothing. Until Lauren's 2 large boxes were filled. Finally, when the first day of school arrived, the two of them got up early, had breakfast and rushed to King's Cross Station. Bates looked at the station with people coming and going, and felt that it was no different from other stations. He muttered, "Platform 9 3/4 is weird." After walking to the 9th platform, Lauren stopped. Only then did Bates notice the somewhat lost little boy next to him, and he guessed that this was where he was. "Hey! Cheer up, kid!" Bates showed no signs of separation. Lauren sniffed, "I was just thinking about what to say to comfort you, an old man." "I don't need to comfort you. You bastard has been able to take care of yourself since you were a child. I'm not worried about you at all." Bates grinned. Lauren was speechless. "Remember to write back, then, say goodbye here, little guy." Seeing this, Bates' tone also softened. "I will miss you, Grandpa Bates." Lauren felt that these words were really like a child's. After saying this, he pushed the car and crashed into the ticket gate. Bates watched the child crash into the wall and disappear. No one around him reacted at all. What a magical guy! Bates' tone became a little emotional. He turned around, his originally straight body and shoulders suddenly slumped down, and his expression became a little sad. After walking a few steps, he wondered again if Lauren could see him through the ticket gate. So he cheered up again and walked out of the station. Bates dragged his body and sat on a bench outside the station, with muddy tears streaming down his face. He covered his face with his hands and said, "It's so abominable that an old man like me is so embarrassed." Lauren, who thoughtlessly walked out of the ticket gate, followed the flow of people and boarded the crimson steam locomotive, and put away his luggage with a heavy heart. Find an empty carriage, sit down by the window and look around. He saw two red-haired twins pushing each other past, and a little fat man walking cautiously with a toad in his hand. Some people matched the impressions in his distant memory. They were not exactly the same, but they had distinct characteristics. After watching for a while, no one came to share a cubicle with him. Lauren closed his eyes and planned to fall asleep. "I'm used to it, I sleep as soon as I get in the car, and when I get off somewhere, I feel refreshed. And there is no need to worry about pickpockets and thieves here, and you will be sorry if you don't sleep." After a while, he woke up to see if he could catch the Hogwarts special peanut and melon seed mineral water. Lauren was very interested in the magic snacks. After squinting his eyes for a while, he was woken up by someone tapping his sleeve on his face. Opening his eyes, he saw Hermione with an angry face in front of her. "Lauren Morgan. Finally found you. More than a month. I've been waiting for your letter every day, but you didn't write to me until school started," Hermione said as she pulled the sleeves of her robe over Lauren's head. Lauren quickly took Hermione's hand. If she continued to hit her, her hair would fall out in advance. Unexpected situation. The little owl has just been bought and is not familiar with it yet. It needs to be brought to Hogwarts to be taught by other owls. Lauren pointed at the little spectacled owl and talked nonsense. He wanted to deal with it first. The poor cat was pecking at breadcrumbs on the shelf when he was suddenly struck by the attack, but he had no way to refute, he could only tilt his head. Cathead grievance.jpg. Hermione believed it. After all, homing pigeons also need to be trained, kittens and puppies also need to be trained, and owls need to be trained to deliver letters. This is very reasonable. She sat across from Lauren, intending to share the knowledge she had learned in advance and what she learned about the magical world. Before she could speak, Lauren stood up and said, "Do you think this Hogwarts Express is powered by magic or mechanical power? What is the power?" As expected, Hermione's attention was turned away and she began to explain her suspicions. Lauren kept responding, and from time to time he would talk nonsense and come back to his senses. "I think coal should be used, and it must be selected coal. Water-washed coal will not work. This water washes coal." Every time Hermione asked a question that Lauren couldn't answer, he started to change his focus. "This trick is called as long as I move fast enough, my teammates' question marks can't catch up with me." Seeing Hermione looking at him with bright eyes, he still felt that he was talking nonsense. Lauren's vanity and bad taste were greatly satisfied. Is this the joy of teasing children? I feel it, I feel it. As for whether there would be any consequences, he didn't care, as long as he was happy, that was all. The cart that Lauren was looking forward to finally arrived. He spent money to buy a little of each and invited Hermione to taste it with him. Hermione was against this kind of wasteful spending, and she had a lunch box prepared by her mother. But she was still a child after all, so she finally couldn't resist the temptation and fell. Lauren is such a nasty bad boy. Although Hermione fell with Lauren, she still insisted on paying half of the money to Lauren, even if he repeatedly refused. From Bibby's strange beans, to pumpkin pie, to licorice wands, and some other weird foods, both of them had a good experience. The strange flavored beans didn't taste like any weird boogers either, which Lauren expressed regret. When it came to the chocolate frog, Hermione couldn't accept it. It looked too much like a real frog. Lauren almost screamed when she took one apart and bit off half of the frog's head, its hind feet still pulsing. Hermione's mouth just opened wide, and before she could scream, Lauren stuffed a frog leg into her mouth, and the severed limb was still pulsing even in her mouth. She wanted to spit it out, but the chocolate immediately melted in her mouth, and the sweet taste and aroma filled her mouth. Hermione's resistance failed and she finally accepted the food, agreeing that it was quite delicious. "And I am very interested in the wizard pictures that are released." The matter didn't end here. Seeing Lauren take out a cockroach from the box and stuff it into his mouth, and when the bursting white juice splashed into the corner of his mouth, Hermione finally broke through and screamed out unbearably. "Ah!" Hermione yelled, but she immediately remembered the scene where she had just been stuffed with a chocolate frog. She covered her mouth tightly, tears almost flowing out. Seeing the little witch like this, Lauren couldn't help laughing. Outside the cubicle, Neville was looking for a toad. What he saw along the way was this scene: a very unrestrained boy with an extremely evil smile, and the little witch wanted to cry but didn't dare to cry next to him. Thinking about Grandma's teachings and the glory of my parents, my fists hardened. Chapter 12. Lauren swallowed the candy in his mouth. It was chocolate with lemon sweet core. It tasted really good. Hermione calmed down, wiped the corners of her eyes, and said to herself, "Magic snacks, magic snacks." Neville pushed the door open, wanting to scold Lauren. At the end of the day, I got scared again and froze in place. The two people in the compartment also saw the little fat man pushing the door open. "Excuse me, what's the matter?" Lauren asked. Neville hesitated a few times. I thought you were bullying the freshmen, but it doesn't seem like you were." Hermione blushed a little, but she still explained, "I was scared by that funny candy." Neville was stunned for a moment and looked at the box on the table. Lauren invited, "Cockroach pile, do you want some?" He had a good impression of this little fat man who was timid but still stood up. Neville quickly waved his hand, "No, no. Even wizards, only some people like cockroaches." Lauren stretched out her hand, "Let me meet you. My name is Lauren Morgan. I am a freshman." Neville shook hands and responded, "My name is Neville Longbottom, and I am also a new student." Hermione also spoke, "I am Hermione Granger." After the three got to know each other, they sat down and started chatting and eating snacks. Hermione was full of curiosity about Neville, who came from a wizarding family, but Neville was a bit shy and inarticulate. Lauren took care of it and the atmosphere was quite pleasant. After a while, Lauren felt something was wrong, and he remembered the plot. He looked up at Neville. At this time, Longbottom had completely forgotten about pets and was happily smacking strange flavored beans. Lauren waited for a while and couldn't help but remind him, "Were you looking for something just now?" Neville slapped his head and exclaimed, "I forgot that my pet was lost. I was looking for my pet just now." Hermione's mind was still sorting out the connotation of this sentence, and Lauren said, "Let's look for it together." The three of them started looking for toads in the carriage. They had no other options and planned to ask them from compartment to compartment. Some of the compartments were already visited by Neville, during which time his expression became increasingly despondent. Neville's previous behavior of happily eating snacks seemed to make Neville feel even more guilty and remorseful. "Did any of you see a toad?" "Neville lost a toad." Hermione opened the door and spoke directly. She was already a little anxious. Neville's state made Hermione a little affected, and her tone was not friendly. Sitting in the compartment were Harry and Ron. He had black hair, green eyes, and some damaged glasses. The person next to him had red hair and some small freckles on his face, and Lauren recognized him at a glance. "We've already told him, we didn't see it." Ron's tone was also a little impatient. He was holding up his wand to dye some things yellow. Hermione also saw it. "Oh. Are you performing magic? Then let's open our eyes." After saying that, she sat down directly. Ron was confused. "Oh, okay." He shook his wand numbly and began to cast spells. "Daisies, sweet cream, and sunshine, turn this silly fat mouse yellow." Nothing happened, the fat grey mouse slept soundly. Lauren's eyes also fell on the grey mouse. No one noticed that the color of his blue pupils gradually became lighter, and shadows floated in his eyes. Lauren saw a dim light of black and blood red floating on the mouse. This was Peter Pettigrew. Inexplicably, Lauren thought of the sentence, "Rat rat." The strange vision quickly dissipated, and the other people must not have been able to see such a scene. Lauren noticed something strange in his eyes, but he didn't know what it was, so he planned to wait until he got to Hogwarts. In the compartment, Hermione had calmed down, fixed Harry's glasses, and introduced herself and Lauren. As they were about to reach their destination, she reminded a few people to change into their robes, and was about to say goodbye to Harry and Ron, and then look for Neville's toad. Lauren couldn't remember where Neville's toad was found in the movie, but he had other plans. He took the two of them and went directly to the senior class for help. The three of them went out and walked not far when they saw a boy with platinum blonde hair and a pale complexion leading two boys who were slightly taller than him, heading towards the compartment where Harry was. Hermione continued the conversation in the cubicle, guessing which house she would be sorted into. She wanted to go to Gryffindor. Ravenclaw was good, but preferably not Slytherin. Neville said that his grandmother hoped that he could be sorted into Gryffindor and become a brave person. But he thought he would go to Hufflepuff. The three of them walked to the car in front and finally saw their target. This man also has red hair and a shiny silver letter P on his chest. Lauren walked up and said, "Hello, hello, we are freshmen this year. Are you a prefect?" The red-haired boy looked a little proud, his eyebrows raised high, as if he was proud to be recognized by the new student as a prefect, but he quickly restrained himself and responded, "Yes, I am Prefect Percy Way." "Sly, can I help you?" Hermione's crisp voice sounded, "This is Neville. His pet toad can't be found. Can you help us find it?" Neville's face turned red. Percy Weasley relaxed and just found a pet, of course, it's not difficult for a prefect. He took out his wand and waved it again and again. Flying around. As the spell sounded, an ugly toad flew out of Neville's pocket and landed on the ground where the wand was pointing. "Oh! I put it in my pocket, I forgot about it." Neville cheered, blushing. Hermione exclaimed, "Is this a flying curse?" Percy's smile grew brighter with the compliment, "You'll learn too." The three of them bid farewell to their prefects and returned to their respective compartments. Lauren put on her robes and shared the uneaten candy on the table with Hermione. "The train will arrive at Hogwarts in 5 minutes. Please leave your luggage on the car and we will take it to school for you." The voice of the announcement echoed on the train. "What magic is this? Is the voice loud?" Hermione asked. The little witch was passionate and curious about everything in the magical world. Several people were talking as they rushed to the car door. People in the whole carriage crowded in and got off the car, pushing and shoving. Neville was dispersed, and Lauren pulled Hermione out. After getting off the station, following Hagrid's greeting, we stumbled all the way along a path, walked out of the woods, and came to a lake. On the high hillside on the other side of the lake stands a majestic castle with towering spires and windows shining with beautiful light, like stars. There were 4 people in a boat. Lauren and Hermione boarded the boat first. Neville also came over, followed by a boy with light brown hair. Lauren didn't pay attention at first, but when the boy introduced himself as Seamus Finnegan, Lauren's eyes widened. "It's you. Explosive genius." The group of boats sailed across the calm lake and passed through the vines. The reflection on the lake rippled with the water, sparkling, and the stars swayed in the water. Lauren felt this scene and had a different kind of mood. On the boat, Hermione was still discussing the issue of sorting, and Lauren spoke up, "I've heard that there will be a test before admission, and those who fail will be expelled from Hogwarts." Hermione turned pale with fright and began to mutter to herself, "What should I do? I still have a lot of knowledge that I haven't memorized. I haven't finished memorizing the textbooks yet. I will definitely be kicked out by Professor McGonagall." Next to them, Neville and Seamus also started to panic. At this time, Lauren showed a mean expression, Hey, I made it up to scare you. Hogwarts has not expelled students for many years." Hermione relaxed and hit Lauren's thigh hard. Lauren covered her leg and started to squeal and pretend to be weird. Hermione felt a little guilty when she saw him like this. Just when she was about to speak, Lauren felt guilty again, "He, I'm just pretending." Hermione was furious and stopped talking to him. Neville and Seamus began to discuss some scary rumors about the branch again, putting pressure on each other. The boat landed on the shore, passed through the tunnel, walked through a meadow, and arrived in front of the castle gate, where Professor McGonagall was already waiting. Chapter 13. Following Professor McGonagall, we arrived at a small empty room. All the freshmen were crowded together, nervously staring at everything around them. "Welcome to Hogwarts." Professor McGonagall used a gentle voice to introduce Hogwarts, about the 4 houses, and about the House Cup. Light shines from the eyes of all the little wizards, and for some of them, the world is different. I hope that no matter which college you are assigned to, you can bring glory to the college. In a few minutes, the sorting ceremony will be held in front of all the teachers and students of the school. I suggest that you tidy up your appearance and keep quiet while waiting. I will pick you up later. After saying that, Professor McGonagall left the room. The little wizards soon started talking to each other. Harry asked Ron and Neville, who came from a wizarding family, how can they accurately assign us to which house? Hermione also pricked up her ears and waited for the answer. I think it was through a test. Fred said it would hurt us a lot, but I think he was joking. Harry and Hermione's hearts trembled again, and panic filled the air. Repaired as before. Hermione began to recite the spell she knew silently again. Lauren is worried whether the Sorting Hat will see the memories of his past life, and whether he will be regarded as an evil dark wizard. It's unlikely that anyone will be sorted into Azkaban at the beginning of Hogwarts. He had never thought about this issue before. He originally believed that Dumbledore and Snape would not pry into the minds of first-year students. But I forgot that there is such a thing as a Sorting Hat. A group of ghosts came out of the back wall and chatted with the new students, comforting them and introducing them to their respective colleges. But the specific process was not disclosed, which made Hermione extremely anxious. Not long after, Professor McGonagall returned and directed the students to line up in single rows through the foyer and into the luxurious dining room. The magic on the dome brought the night starry sky into the auditorium. Students from 4 colleges were sitting around the 4 long tables in the middle. The tables were filled with shining gold plates and goblets. The stage in front is where the professors sit. Everyone is watching this group of freshmen. Professor McGonagall placed a 4-legged stool in front of her, with an old pointed wizard hat placed on it. The freshman watched helplessly as his hat split open like a mouth, and he began to sing. "Try it on and I will tell you. Which college should you be assigned to? You may belong to Gryffindor. There is courage buried deep in my heart. Their courage, and chivalry. To make Gryffindor outstanding. You may be a Hufflepuff. The people there are honest and loyal. Hufflepuff students are stoic and honest. Not afraid of hard work. If you are smart, maybe into the wise old Ravenclaw. Those who are wise and knowledgeable. There they will always meet their comrades. Maybe you'll go into Slytherin. Maybe you can make sincere friends here. But those cunning and insidious people will use any means to achieve their goals. Come where me. Don't be afraid. Don't panic." After singing, the freshmen understood the process of sorting and relaxed. Except for Ron, who had been frightened by Fred's various terrifying rumors for a long time, and he clamored to twist Fred's neck off. The sorting process officially began, and Professor McGonagall began calling, "Hannah Abbott." Lauren finally saw the eldest daughter of the new student at Hogwarts. The little girl had 2 golden braids. She stumbled up and sat down, putting on her hat. "Hufflepuff." The little Hufflepuff wizards burst into applause. They welcomed everyone, purebloods and half-bloods alike. When Hermione's name was read, the little girl hurriedly ran up. Before she could put on her hat, the Sorting Hat shouted, "Gryffindor." Hermione sat down on the long Gryffindor table, slowed her heart and breathing, and began to stare at Lauren. People in unfamiliar environments always want to be with familiar people. Lauren Morgan. It was finally his turn. At this time, Lauren was worried about his little secret, and his heart couldn't stop racing. "Oh, strange boy, there is a fog in your mind, you don't look very smart," the Sorting Hat whispered. Although Lauren felt that this was a personal attack, he was relieved. It seemed that the Sorting Hat could not see the past memories. "Hufflepuff is a good choice." The Sorting Hat continued, "Very good, the attack has affected the little badgers." Lauren relaxed, and his thoughts couldn't help but wander off. It would be better if it wasn't Azkaban. "What are you holding in your mind? How could it be Azkaban?" the Sorting Hat asked. Lauren shivered and did not answer. Okay, then the Sorting Hat trailed off. Gryffindor. Finding an empty seat at the Gryffindor table, Lauren's heart and butt dropped together. When the sorting was over, most of the young wizards below were looking at the professor on the stage. The most eye-catching one is the silver-haired Albus Dumbledore, who looks very old but very energetic. Idiot. Crying. Residue. Screw it. Thank you everyone. Dumbledore stood up and said a few words that made people think he was not in his right mind. But when Percy explained to everyone that Dumbledore was the best wizard in the world, those words seemed to have a lot of meaning. Food kept coming out of the plates on the table, including roast beef, roast chicken, pork chops, lamb chops, carrots, and the potatoes that Lauren remembered fondly. The atmosphere of the banquet reached a climax, and the freshmen had a great time chatting with the ghosts. One ghost calls himself Sir Nicholas of Mimsy and is reluctant to talk about his head. But in the end, under the expectant eyes of everyone, he shook his head and slid off his neck. Lauren feasted his eyes and said to him with some regret, "If you could live until Louis XVI improved the guillotine, you wouldn't have this trouble." Next, he and Sir Nicholas began to discuss Louis XVI and his guillotine. At the end, Sir Nicholas paid high respect to Louis XVI. After the staple food were various desserts. Lauren took several flavors of pudding and slowly tasted them spoonful by spoonful. He also hid a portion for a late-night snack. The conversation turned to their respective families. Ron and Neville are both pure-blood wizards, but such families are still in the minority. More of them are half-bloods like Seamus, and the rest are lucky little wizards like Hermione and Lauren who come from Muggle families. Amidst the laughter, Lauren saw black shadows flashing on Professor Snape's arm and Harry's scar at the same time, which was particularly dazzling in the soft light of the hall. The shadow quickly faded, but the scarf on Professor Quirrell's head began to glow with black light again, and it lasted for a while. Prefect Percy introduced everyone one by one. The one in purple is Professor Quirrell, who teaches defense against the dark arts. The black robe with the hooked nose is Professor Snape of Potions, who is very good at dark magic. Harry silently took the professor to heart. Professor Snape in the distance noticed those eyes early on, and his memories were drowned like sea water, and complex emotions stirred up waves in his heart over and over again. The child doesn't look very pleasant, but he has beautiful eyes. Oh, everyone has eaten now. I want to say a few more words to everyone. Principal Dumbledore asked everyone not to enter the woods or cast spells in the corridor, and then frantically emphasized the corridor on the right side of the 4th floor. Lauren thought that this quite meant that there was no 300 taels of silver in this place. The dinner ended with an indescribable school song, set to the melody of the funeral march, which was sung with gusto and Lauren listened with great interest. He will definitely teach the twins lost rivers before graduation. That scene will be very interesting. After the meeting, the freshmen dragged their exhausted bodies back to the lounge with their seniors. Lauren and the others followed Percy and saw the fat lady in the portrait. Lauren, Harry, Ron, Neville, and Seamus were assigned to a dormitory. He was obviously very tired when he was in the restaurant, but when he got to the dormitory he was so energetic that he didn't want to just fall asleep. After greeting each other, the conversation gradually picked up. Harry and Ron had already known each other on the train, Lauren and Neville were also familiar with each other, and Seamus met Lauren and Neville on the boat. The conversation was intense and everyone discussed the courses they knew, from transfiguration to charms, from herbal medicine to potions. Neville also knew a little bit, but he was not very good at talking and would stutter when he spoke quickly. Mainly Ron was saying that he was enjoying the scene. Harry was a little worried about whether he could keep up with the progress. Lauren and Neville took turns comforting him, and he quickly felt at ease. Before going to bed, Lauren saw Harry sitting on the edge of the bed, looking at the moon outside the window. Harry. Lauren said. Sweet dreams. Chapter 14. The next morning, when Lauren got up, it had only just begun to light up outside. Seeing that several people were still sleeping, Lauren put on his clothes and went out. The pudding in the pocket last night was replaced by a new piece by the house elf, because the one hidden last night was lemon-flavored, and this piece is strawberry-flavored. After walking out of the lounge and having breakfast, he briefly walked around the 1st and 2nd floors of the castle. Looking at the girls' bathroom, Lauren was eager to try it, but he didn't know how to speak snakes, and there should be a myrtle in there. On the first day of school, he didn't want to be perceived as a pervert by his new classmates, so he gave up. The entire castle has a quaint sense of history, neat and yet heavy. There are various portraits hanging around the corridor, and many of the people inside are alive, and some even say hello to Lauren. I probably walked around and spent a lot of time on the stairs. Lauren didn't know the rules of the stairs, so he could only wait for the change. Several times along the way, I was transported directly from the 1st floor to the 2nd floor, or transported down, and it took a long time to get out in the end. There were more and more students in the corridor, and Lauren went back to the dormitory to wake up Harry and the others who were still sleeping. Without waiting much, he grabbed his textbook and hurried to the first transfiguration class. When they arrived at the classroom, Professor McGonagall the cat was already sitting on the desk, with her 2 front paws erect and her tail wrapped in front of her paws. Lauren's eyes suddenly became dark again, his innate vision activated, and the cat's body glowed with a soft red light. Professor McGonagall, who was in cat form, raised her head and looked at Lauren. She noticed the blue eyes with obscure shadows. But she didn't make any moves. In the first lesson, she showed the animagus to the new students. This was an effective way to arouse students' interest in the transfiguration class. The vision quickly returned to normal, and Lauren pretended not to know anything and found a seat to sit down. Hermione had also arrived, sitting in the middle seat and flipping through her transfiguration textbook. "Have you seen that cat on the podium?" Lauren leaned over. Hermione didn't even look up. You were there before I got here. If I were you, I'd do a preview instead of small talk. It's still early before class, and you've almost memorized the textbook, so why not pet the cat? Lauren smiled like a devil who tricked people into signing a soul contract. Hermione raised her eyes and secretly looked at the cat on the stage, feeling a little moved. She had almost memorized the textbook, and she kept flipping through it to resolve some complex emotions such as excitement and nervousness. Look at this tabby cat. It has shiny fur, is clean and well behaved. It will be very satisfying to touch it a few times while there is no one around. Lauren's expression was very vicious. Under someone's instigation, Hermione went up to tidy the tabby cat's fur and stroked the cat's head. In a completely unfamiliar environment, this was a challenge for her, and she got over it quickly. Lauren sat upright and said, "How's it going?" "It's not bad." Hermione smiled and looked much more relaxed. "Tell me what Professor McGonagall will teach us today." "I think it will be the principles of magic, or teach us a simple transformation spell." The villain in Lauren's heart couldn't wait, but he still endured it and said seriously, "I don't know, but I haven't memorized the textbook yet, so I'm going to, pft, cough cough cough." He couldn't hold it in anymore and pretended to cough. Twice. Lauren opened the book and said sternly, "As if I wanted to learn, okay, don't say any more." Harry and Ron were still late, having spent too much time chatting over dinner and being stuck on the stairs for a while. Hermione looked a little disgusted at the last two people who came in, curled her lips and looked at the podium, and then watched helplessly as the tabby cat in front turned into a stern-faced Professor McGonagall. The girl suddenly turned pale and was speechless. Lauren was giggling beside her, shrugging her shoulders, but not daring to laugh out loud. Professor McGonagall finished scolding Harry and Ron for being late and started teaching. "What you just saw was animagus, a profound form of transformation. It can transform people into suitable animals and do many things that humans cannot do." The students became excited and the classroom became chattering. "I want to become a lion. The great Gryffindor animagus must be a lion. If you ask me, I should turn into an eagle so that I can fly. Could Slytherin's animagus be a snake?" The topic started from what I wanted to become, to gradually straying in a strange direction. "Quiet." Professor McGonagall looked at the noisy classroom and pointed her wand at the desk. The desk began to twist and swell, with one end growing a tail and the other turning into a pig's head. When the corners of the table turned into limbs and pig's trotters, the entire table turned into a pig's head. A big fat pig, squeaking and squealing. The students' eyes widened, attracted by the magical transformation spell, and fell silent. Professor McGonagall pointed her wand at the fat pig that the desk had turned into, and glanced at the students below with stern eyes. "It seems to be saying that whoever disobeys will be turned into a fat pig." Under Professor McGonagall's explanation, the students gradually understood that the transfiguration spell involved advanced theory and would take a long time to practice. Professor McGonagall gave everyone a match and asked the students to try to turn the match into a needle. Hermione didn't say a word to Lauren the whole time. She repeated the motion of waving her wand, causing some obvious changes in the match. Lauren moved closer to Hermione and began to remedy the situation. "Before waving the wand, think carefully about the shape of the needle, how long it is, how thin it is, and which end is the needle." Hermione didn't reply and flicked her wand vigorously. Listening to the slight whistling sound of the short wand being waved, Lauren felt that Hermione wanted to smash her dog's head. Soon, Hermione managed to turn the match into a needle, which was still as thick as a match and somewhat shaped like a needle. Hermione Granger is making rapid progress. She deserves 5 extra points. Professor McGonagall showed a rare smile. She was very happy to see talented students. The professor didn't seem to mind her offensive behavior, and Hermione finally felt at ease. Professor McGonagall demonstrated the deformation process several more times and explained some key points. "Lauren Morgan, come to my office to see me tonight," Professor McGonagall said after class. Lauren's heart skipped a beat. The real culprit was discovered. There was no blind Dora here. There was an herbal medicine class in the afternoon. Professor Pomona Sprout was not a serious person. Her class was also very interesting and passed quickly. Although Hermione was in the same group as Lauren, she still didn't say a word to Lauren. At night, Lauren came to the small study next to the corridor on the second floor, Professor McGonagall's office. Not long after the knock on the door, "Come in." Professor McGonagall's voice came through the wooden door. Lauren walked in and saw Professor McGonagall grading something, maybe a senior assignment, or something else. He found a stool and sat down properly. Professor McGonagall didn't say anything, so he just waited quietly. After a while, McGonagall raised her head, stood up, walked out of the desk and came to the door. "Let's go, follow me to see Principal Dumbledore." "Professor McGonagall, that was just a prank. You don't have to go see the principal." Lauren suddenly panicked. Professor McGonagall didn't say anything and walked out of the office. Lauren quickly followed and defended as he walked. "I really didn't mean to tease you," and Hermione maliciously. Professor McGonagall kept a straight face and remained silent all the way, wanting to teach this kid a lesson. Taking Lauren to the third floor, they stopped in front of a huge stone monster statue. "Licorice wand." After the command was spoken, the monster statue jumped aside, and the wall behind it split into two. Behind the wall was a spiral staircase that was moving slowly upward, like an escalator. As soon as Lauren and Professor McGonagall stepped up, they heard a roar from behind and the wall closed again. They whirled higher and higher, higher and higher, until at last they came to a halt in front of a gleaming oak door with a brass knocker in the shape of a griffin. Lauren followed Professor McGonagall in. The white-bearded Dumbledore was already waiting there. Watching the two people come in, he said seriously to Lauren, "Well, Mr. Morgan, nice to see you." No matter what the situation was, Lauren never had a burden that he couldn't handle. He sat down and said calmly, "Oh, Principal Dumbledore, I have long admired your name." "Ha ha ha ha, ×2. The two met their eyes and laughed happily together. Dumbledore took out a box of cockroaches from under the table and handed it to Lauren. "Being with young people, an old man, seem to become a little younger." Lauren also understood that this was probably not a prelude to expulsion, so he neatly took out one and stuffed it into his mouth. "Then you can come to the lounge more often and tell us stories." Dumbledore looked at Lauren's crisp action and his smile became even more satisfied. "Professor McGonagall told me about you. Hogwarts always meets students with extraordinary talents." Lauren was a little confused. Is playing tricks on people a sign of talent? Professor McGonagall, who was next to him, had long been speechless at the interaction between the two people, and finally said, "Lauren's eyes are a little different, and he can see things that are difficult for others to see." "Yes, you told me before school started that there was a student who could see the landing point of the apparition," Dumbledore said. Professor McGonagall added, "Also this morning, Lauren seemed to be able to see through my animagus, so I brought him here for you to see." Lauren realized that it was for that mysterious talent. "Can you share your unique perspective, Lauren?" Dumbledore looked at Lauren with a smile. "Certainly." Lauren also wanted to know what this talent was. He began to carefully recall the scene he saw at that time, about apparition. "Before Professor McGonagall appeared, I seemed to be able to see blurred distortions in space." He paused and continued, "This morning, I saw a red light on the cat on the podium, which gave me a familiar feeling. I probably guessed it." Professor McGonagall took the opportunity to add, "Then I used this to tease poor Miss Granger, causing her to be frightened for the entire class." "Ha ha 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 ha, what an enviable age." Dumbledore laughed. Later, Dumbledore chatted with Professor McGonagall, and they told Lauren that there are many people in the world with magical talents. Some are inherited by blood, such as the mixed blood wizard who has the charm ability of Vila, and some are awakened by oneself, such as the disguise magus that can change the face, or the gift of prophecy. Neither of them knew the specific condition of Lauren's eyes. Dumbledore said that he would go through some information and ask some old friends, and would tell Lauren the results when they came up. The conversation lasted for a long time, and Lauren and Dumbledore finished eating a whole box of cockroaches. When Professor McGonagall suggested that it was time to leave, Lauren also made a decision and said, "By the way, Principal Dumbledore, I also saw some strange scenes, and I think I should tell you." Chapter 15. "Of course, I'm happy to be a listener." Dumbledore looked at Professor McGonagall at the door and told her to go back and rest first. Professor McGonagall didn't pay much attention and turned around to go out. New students often make self-righteous and surprising discoveries, perhaps the moving armor in the castle, or some secret passages behind the portraits. Even if he makes some big discovery, the principal will tell himself that he wishes he could delegate all the work to himself and retire early. Dumbledore groped under the table and pulled out another box of sweets, but it wasn't a pile of cockroaches. The principal doesn't have much in stock, so he wants to keep it for himself. Lauren first described what he saw at the sorting ceremony, the scar on Harry's forehead, the strange shadow that appeared on Professor Snape's arm, and Professor Quirrell's strange scarf. Lauren had some guesses about this. Professor Snape had an irremovable mark of the Dark Devil on his arm, and Harry's scar contained fragments of Voldemort's soul. But in view of some undisclosed little secrets, he could not express these thoughts. Dumbledore's eyes narrowed in thought. Snape's situation goes without saying, but Harry's situation seems to be worse than he thought. As for Professor Quirrell, after returning from Albania, the smell on his body became more and more obvious day by day. Carrying that extra scarf was just a poor performance. He devised a brilliant plan based on this, and he believed that the fish would take the bait soon. Lauren, you have extraordinary talents, not just your eyes. Dumbledore looked seriously at Lauren, who was putting lemon sherbet candy in his mouth. Lauren opened his mouth, stuck for a moment, and was a little confused. Does he have any other talents that he hasn't noticed? Dumbledore could see Lauren's doubts. I am willing to share unique secrets with people I have just met, maybe because I am the principal, but being willing to entrust trust is an extremely rare quality. The principal started talking about Lauren's eyes again. Magic perception is a profound skill. Some students may not be able to learn it even until they graduate. You are a big step ahead. What about principal, can you also see those strange things? Lauren asked. Dumbledore curled up the corners of his mouth, pretending to be reserved. Maybe it's not that clear, but you can still see something. Animagus too? Where's the apparition? Lauren was also very curious about this three-no golden finger. Haha, keep it a secret, he said, giving Lauren a mysterious smile. Then you saw Ron Weasley's mouse. Is it strange? Although he was speechless at the old naughty boy, Lauren still wanted to speed up the plot. Oh, the Weasley boy, I didn't pay attention to this. I didn't even know he had his own pet mouse. I'm more familiar with their parents, Arthur and Molly. It seemed that he wanted to continue talking, but Dumbledore stopped in time. You know, when you get older, you always like to talk about the past. Let's talk about this rat. Lauren swallowed the candy. The first time I saw that mouse, I saw something similar to Professor McGonagall's transformation into a cat. Dumbledore's face straightened and he became serious. You mean, that mouse is also an animagus? I think so. Lauren began to add the information he knew. That mouse has been in Ron's house for more than 10 years, and it was once Percy's pet. It's not a friendly move for a wizard to hide in someone else's house. Dumbledore's tone was unconsciously majestic. Are we going to get him? No, we'd better not disturb him just yet. Dumbledore expressed his thoughts. An evil wizard has been hiding for more than 10 years. We cannot be sure whether he has done anything to the Weasley family or caused any irreparable harm to Ron or others. This is something we all find difficult to accept. The world of magic is magical, with weird curses and black magic emerging one after another. More than 10 years is enough time to plant a curse on the Weasley family. Dumbledore's worries are justified. But Lauren was very anxious now. He knew the cause and effect, but he couldn't say it out loud. Dumbledore thought that Lauren just wanted to catch the bad guys first, and he already had a plan in mind. Now, I have a task for you. As he spoke, Dumbledore waved his wand, and a star flew from the window and landed on his palm. A warm yellow glow floated in the old man's palm. Lauren noticed that Dumbledore's hands were a little rough, but not very wrinkled. He didn't look very old, but instead looked like the hands of a man in his 40s, as thick and powerful as even Grandpa Bates could compare to. He stretched out his hand to Lauren, who handed over his right hand blankly. The star fell on Lauren's palm, and the light sank into the child's immature hand, like the moon falling into a quiet lake. Finally, a four-pointed star pattern the size of a coin appeared in Lauren's palm. I need you to attach the star to that mouse in a way that no one will notice. Dumbledore winked at Lauren. Lauren finally accepted the task in a daze. As for what other plans he had, Dumbledore didn't say anything. Lauren didn't realize it until he was some distance away. Wasn't he fooling the children? The key things were not mentioned at all. There are so many evil minds. Lauren thought quietly. It was not too late at this time, and the corridor was still lit by candlelight. It would be a while before Filch and Lady Norris would start patrolling. Filch was the caretaker of the castle, and Lady Norris was Filch's cat. Today's Gryffindor password is Pig Nose. In the lounge, Ron was sitting on a chair in front of the fireplace, teaching Harry how to play wizard chess. Hermione was reading a book in the lounge, and Gryffindor students from other grades also gathered together in twos and threes, playing and studying. Lauren walked into the lounge. Hermione looked up, then turned her head and breathed a sigh of relief. Although this man behaved badly and she didn't want to forgive him yet, Hermione didn't want Lauren to be expelled. Here, Harry invited Lauren to come over and play together. Lauren is interested in wizard chess, but has other things to do right now. Ron, remember when you wanted to turn your mouse yellow, on the train? Lauren already had a plan. Yes, but it failed. Why are you talking about this? I asked Professor McGonagall some questions about the transformation spell by the way. Can I try it now? Can I borrow your mouse? Ron was a little hesitant. He really liked his pets. However, after Lauren took out a handful of lemon sherbet candies, Ron felt that it was normal to lend a pet to a friend. Lauren pretended to take the mouse. Banban was sleeping soundly and had no reaction. It looked like an ordinary mouse, only slightly larger than Lauren's hand. Feeling the soft and warm touch of the flesh on his hand through the sparse short hair, Lauren had a feeling that he could squeeze the rat's bone stubble out of the flesh with a hard squeeze. There was an impulse in his heart, tempting him to squeeze it. Exhaling and shaking off the inexplicable feeling, Lauren pretended, "Daisies, sweet cream and sunshine, turn this fat mouse yellow." The mouse didn't respond at all and was still sleeping. Lauren returned the mouse. "It doesn't look good. If you ask me, there's something wrong with the magic spell, and we can't use it." Ron happily stuffed lemon snow candy into his mouth and gave Harry a few pieces. "Let's play wizard chess. You two go on, I'll take a look first." Lauren sat down calmly. He raised his hand and saw that the four-pointed star in his palm was gone. Chapter 16. The freshmen were extremely busy in the first week. There are not many first-year courses at Hogwarts, and the homework for the first year is pretty easy. Time was spent getting familiar with the terrain of Hogwarts, especially the weird staircase, which had different patterns at different times. Lauren made a note in the morning that he should turn left after turning right. At noon, he applied this rule and was stuck on another disorderly staircase for nearly a quarter of an hour. Little wizards can often be seen wandering on the stairs, and Neville is even more persecuted, but he has already written to his family asking them to send a memory ball. The new students asked their seniors for help and were told that this was a Hogwarts tradition and that the new students should explore on their own. The Weasley twins told everyone that there are many secret passages in the castle. They had spent time exploring several shortcuts before, which were of great use whether for classes or night outings. Regarding the secret passage, what Lauren remembered was that it was near the Hufflepuff lounge, and scratching the portrait could lead directly to the kitchen. There is also a room of requirement on the 8th floor, but I haven't had time to try these yet. Herbal medicine classes are held 3 times a week, each time with a different college, and there is another one this morning. In the greenhouse behind the castle, the freshmen, led by Professor Sprout, transplanted a sour-smelling fungus. Lauren and Hermione were in a group. Hermione had already memorized the textbook and listened carefully to the lecture. Lauren hugged his thigh, and the two quickly completed the task and cooperated happily. Few people were willing to follow Hermione's guidance. She was also very comfortable in this class and couldn't help but start to teach Lauren a lesson: if you get rid of your bad and prankish hobbies, we will become good friends. I try my best. Lauren spoke loudly, but his voice quickly weakened, but sometimes I just can't control it. So you already knew that the cat was Professor McGonagall, and you deliberately instigated me to go. Hermione couldn't continue. Lauren looked at his nose and looked at his heart as if it was none of my business. I'm not, don't talk nonsense. Hermione was furious and pinched Lauren's face hard with her muddy hands. Children were rich in collagen and felt good. Hey, don't go too far. Lauren was disappointed and did not dare to go back in revenge. Hermione remembered Professor McGonagall calling Lauren to the office. Did Professor McGonagall teach you a lesson last night? No, we talked about some things. I can't tell you now. I will know later. Lauren didn't talk about anything else. Although Hermione was very curious, she was also very smart and did not ask further questions. The matter ends here. During lunch, Lauren saw Professor McGonagall calling the 3 eldest Weasley children, Percy and the twins. A senior student said that the twins might have caused trouble again. Ron gloated and smiled happily. It was true that brothers and sisters respected each other. There was Charms class in the afternoon, and Professor Phileas Flitwick was the head of Ravenclaw House. He was so short that he had to stand on a pile of books to reach the table. The roll call came before class, and when Harry was called, Professor Flitwick fell to the ground with excitement. Harry Potter, oh, the famous Harry Potter. Professor Flitwick has experienced Voldemort's dark period. He is very convinced of Dumbledore, grateful to Harry as the person who ended the turmoil, and has high respect for Harry's parents. Harry was a little embarrassed by this. After making a fool of himself, other students also looked down upon the fighting master. But when Professor Flitwick started giving lectures, all the students no longer dared to look down upon this short professor. He could always clearly answer any of your questions about spells and knew the origins of various spells well. The first class started with the fluorescent spell. Only a few people's front sections of wands could emit faint light strands. Hermione's light was the most obvious, earning another 5 points for Gryffindor. Although she is a Gryffindor, she still becomes Professor Flitwick's favorite student. Lauren was paddling among them. The class had just begun and he didn't dare to go too far. While paddling, I chatted with the people around me and got along well with a few familiar people. Harry only half understood the theoretical part, but after a few classes, he found that the others were similar to him, and he relaxed and no longer felt uneasy. He couldn't imagine how he would face the ridicule of his uncle's family if he was really fired. Ron's spell-casting process was not smooth because of his wand's broken unicorn hair core. This actually shows that Ron has a talent that is difficult for him to detect. With a broken wand, he can barely use some magic to keep up with the progress of the class. Neville reluctantly followed the main force. What he liked most was the herbal medicine class. You don't need to care about talent or use your brain to play with herbs, just be patient, and Neville has no shortage of patience. Seamus is worthy of being an explosion genius. Even a fluorescent spell can blow up the table black. Hermione was always instructing people around her on how to wave the wand and how to say spells. Such behavior made others uncomfortable. Except for Lauren, Hermione never made many friends. Lauren wouldn't worry about this matter because he knew Hermione didn't have any ill intentions. Responding to Hermione's instructions, she said yeah, that makes sense and turned her head to paddle. It was quite fun to see the little girl looking so angry. On Wednesday night, they used telescopes to observe the starry sky and learn the names of different stars and the paths of the planets. But everyone regarded it as some form of entertainment. The most anticipated course is the Defense Against the Dark Arts class. Everyone is curious about the weird magical creatures and weird black magic. It would be best if you could learn some magic spells that you can use. But Professor Quirrell's first lesson became a joke. The smell of garlic wafted throughout the classroom. Professor Quirrell was teased so much that he could hardly maintain order in the classroom. Potions classes on Friday. This morning while having breakfast in the restaurant, Lauren sat next to Harry. Harry, have you previewed the book 1,000 Magic Herbs and Mushrooms? Lauren's expression of wanting to watch a show was almost printed on his face. I looked through it before school started, but didn't read it carefully. Harry saw Lauren's confused expression. Why do you ask? Will there be a test before potions class starts? I don't know if it's a test or not, but I see that your hall is dark, and today will not go well. Lauren's tone became enigmatic. Hermione interjected from the side, what kind of magic is this? Why haven't I seen it before? Lauren was about to say something when the email arrived. During meals at Hogwarts, owls will fly in through the skylight, find their respective owners, and throw letters or packages in front of them. Snow White Hedwig flew over and stopped in front of Harry, placing a note on his plate. Lauren saw the right moment and took Hedwig down to masturbate her. Cuckoo! Hedwig flapped her wings and tried to struggle, but soon became docile under the feeding of jam bread and candies. Hermione's eyes grew hot when she saw it, and she took the opportunity to touch a few handfuls. Harry read the note. It was a letter from Hagrid. Dear Harry. I know you have no classes on Friday afternoon. I wonder if you could come over and have tea with me around 3 in the afternoon? I'd love to hear how your first week goes. Please let Hedwig give me a reply. Hagrid. Ron, Lauren, how about you accompany me to meet a friend on Friday? Harry put the note away and invited Ron and Lauren to join him. Hagrid is the keykeeper of our school. He lives in the Forbidden Forest. He is a kind big man. We can visit the Forbidden Forest. Ron opened his mouth in surprise. Lauren also wanted to see the Forbidden Forest, which would be a convenient place to practice magic in the future. They both agreed, and Harry wrote a reply and asked Hedwig to take it back to Hagrid. The potions classroom is underground and is cooler than the main building of the castle. There are glass jars along the walls around the classroom with animal specimens soaked in them. Lauren has a complicated view of Professor Snape. There is no doubt that he is a good person, but as the saying goes, what is the saddest thing is that when you meet a person and make a mistake, you want to make up for it and pay it off, but in the end discover that there is absolutely no way you can make amends and the sins you have committed can never be made up for. We can never pay back what we have done. However, we still need to have a good relationship with Professor Snape. Grandpa Bates also needs to rely on him to learn how to best prepare the Wolfsbane potion. If not, you can buy it from him, but I don't know what the price is. The Half-Blood Prince's notebook seems to be at the back of this classroom. Lauren plans to look for it later, but it's better not to be too weird at the beginning of school. Chapter 17. Harry Potter. Professor Snape felt a little dazed when he read the name. Yes. Harry replied. Professor Snape looked at those eyes and his breathing quickened. The green one is hidden behind the glasses, reflecting the faint light in the basement, like the green light reflecting on the broken glass in the darkness at night. It was so similar, for a moment it seemed like Lily was really looking at him. He wanted to apologize to her so much. When he was young, he always had low self-esteem and was conceited. When he got angry, he blurted out some words. Before he could figure out how to explain his unintentional words, the two of them drifted away. People with low self-esteem and arrogance go to the other extreme. Maybe there was a chance before that. He wanted to prove himself and show those people what kind of talent he had, but in the end he pushed her into the abyss with his own hands. Life was so fragile and irreversible. He was willing to die with his own life. It's Lily, but some people will never come back. This world is so boring, darkness is always the main theme, but you can't die easily, you have to pay for your sins, and some people have to pay the price. Snape adjusted the table and looked at the next person on the list. Only Lauren present noticed something strange about Professor Snape. When he read Lauren's name, Snape also looked at him deeply. This made Lauren speculate that Dumbledore should have communicated with the professors about the Ratscabbers. There was a dark wizard in the school and it was impossible not to inform the professors. After counting the students, Professor Snape introduced them to the great subject of potions as usual. No wands are waved, no spells are uttered in my classes. Snape began a low aria. Personally, I don't expect some of you to understand the techniques and mysteries of potions. However, for a very small number of talented people, I can teach you how to confuse people's minds and imprison their senses. I can teach you how to bottle fame, brew honor, and even live forever. I don't know if Professor Snape says this to freshmen every year, but Snape's poem reciting the same words is quite fascinating. Harry next to him wrote this down in his notebook. He felt that the professor's attitude was not very friendly, but he still wrote down what he said. Snape also noticed that Harry was writing and drawing below, with his head lowered, and his maverick look was somewhat similar to James, and a feeling of irritation came to his heart. Perhaps some people in Hogwarts feel confident because they are famous. I think you don't have to listen carefully. The aria has some twists and turns at this point. Potter. Tell me, what will I get if I add narcissus root powder to wormwood infusion? Snape asked suddenly. Harry was a little panicked and looked at Ron, who was also stunned. The Slytherin students looked at this scene and gloated. This was their head of house, who would definitely deal with Gryffindor. On the other hand, the little lions were a little confused. Do they have to answer questions in the first lesson? Hermione was about to raise her hands in excitement, but she almost had "I know this question. Ask me." printed on her face. Harry had to tell the truth. "I don't know, sir." Snape looked at him, as if he wanted to see something from Harry's body. It seems that fame does not mean everything. Let's change the question. If we want to find Bezoar, where should we start? Hermione raised her arms high in the air. Harry glanced at the person next to him and said, "I don't know, sir." Snape then asked, "So what's the difference between Aconitum wolfsbane and Aconitum scaphoides?" Lauren and Ron looked at Harry with pity. Hermione wanted to stand up and answer directly, but she resisted the urge and raised her hands straight without leaving her stool. Harry was a little helpless, and he also understood that this was making things difficult for him. "I don't know, sir." His tone became more relaxed. He couldn't answer anyway, so he was arrogant. "So, it's a pity that the name is in vain, isn't it, Mr. Potter?" Snape didn't sound regretful at all, but felt relieved. Harry was a little annoyed and said with a hint of sting, "Obviously Hermione knows the answer." It would be a pity not to let her answer. A few students laughed out loud. Snape glanced at them and said softly, "Quiet." The students all sensed a substantial pressure, and their laughter was suppressed. Hermione was still struggling to raise her hands when Snape walked up to her, his footsteps making the classroom seem even quieter. "Put your hands down, silly girl." Hermione was a little disappointed, but she still put down her raised hand. At this time, Snape turned his gaze to Lauren and stared into his eyes. "Some people have a little talent and are equally self-righteous." Dumbledore told him about Lauren's strange eyes. In order to deal with the animagus that had been hiding in the Weasley family for more than 10 years, Snape prepared some potions. He worked late at night these nights. Lauren expressed confusion. "Why are you shooting at me? My eyes are not green." "Lauren Morgan, please answer these questions." Lauren knew that Professor Snape would tease Harry in the first potions class, but he couldn't remember exactly what questions he had asked, so he couldn't tell Harry the answers in advance. But before the start of school, Lauren read the potions textbook thoroughly for alchemy and wolfsbane potion, and memorized all the knowledge points. Powdered narcissus root and mugwort can be mixed together to form a powerful sleeping potion. Take the water of life and death. Bezoars can be found in the stomachs of cows. Aconitum scapulae and Aconitum wolfsbane are the same plant, collectively called Aconitum. Lauren answered one by one. These are indeed not profound knowledge. Snape didn't succeed and stopped caring about Lauren. He turned to scold other students. "Why don't you write all this down?" Then the sound of quill writing on parchment rustled in the classroom. In the commotion, Snape said, "Potter contradicted the teacher. Gryffindor deducted 5 points for this." The little lions curled their lips. "But you didn't answer the question at all." Lauren didn't have any ideas. When he came out to hang out, he had to talk about his background and power, and the deduction of points would not affect the Academy Cup. Chapter 18. Potions class continued, and Professor Snape's attitude towards the other Gryffindor students was equally bad. Students worked in pairs to prepare a simple potion to treat scabies, which required weighing dried nettles, crushing snake fangs and cooking tentacled slugs. Snape praised Malfoy emphatically on this step. The blonde boy indeed handled this step perfectly. The most dangerous step is to add the porcupine quills. The book says that if this step is handled incorrectly, there will be big trouble. Soon everyone knew what the big trouble was. Neville and Seamus teamed up and put the porcupine quills in before the pot was even taken off the fire. A burst of acidic green smoke suddenly emerged from the pot, and then the pot twisted and shrank into a ball. The potion inside suddenly spilled over and flowed everywhere on the stone slabs, making a corrosive hissing sound. "Ah!" The people next to him stood up on the stool quickly, and others followed suit. A few who moved slower had a big hole burned out of their shoes. No one was hurt, except for Neville, whose arms and legs were sprayed with potion, his clothes corroded and torn, and red and swollen scabies quickly appeared on his skin as the potion stained his skin. Neville couldn't bear the pain. He squatted on the ground and kept wailing. He wanted to cover the wound with his hand, but the pain was even stronger when he touched it, and the pus was crushed and flowed out. Lauren, Ron and others felt uncomfortable watching, but there was nothing they could do. Snape came over, staring hard at Neville, looking very angry. He waved his wand and cleared the potion from the ground. Then he turned his wand and quickly cast several healing spells on Neville, which made Neville's wails quieter. Snape took out a small black bottle from his arms, poured out a drop of white, tree sap-like substance, mixed it with the scabies treatment potion, and applied it to Neville's wound. The red and swollen scabies fade quickly, leaving only some red marks. Neville couldn't help but reach out and touch it, and shuddered in pain again. After Snape saw this scene, he finally opened his mouth and cursed, "You idiot, I think you put the porcupine quills in the pot without taking it off the fire, right?" Neville was scolded and cried, sobbing. "Send him to the ward of the school doctor's office. I'm just dealing with it temporarily. The doctor still needs to treat him again." Snape couldn't stand it and ordered Seamus next to him. Seamus helped Neville and went to the school doctor's office. Hermione was a little scared, but also a little angry. She bit her lip with her teeth and said bitterly, "It's too scary. There are no safety measures in the experimental classes here." Lauren's only impression of the potions class in the movie was the part where he was teasing Harry, and the unexpected events that followed also scared him. However, Lauren comforted Hermione, "This is just an accident. Everyone will be more cautious in the future." The surrounding students got off their stools and sat down again one after another. Some students praised Professor Snape for being a potion master. Before Harry could recover from his shock, Snape started acting like a monster again. Potter, why didn't you tell him not to add porcupine quills? Do you think he's a bastard because he made a mistake? Grant. Fendo deducts another 5 points. Harry felt a little depressed. He didn't know the grudges between his parents and didn't understand why Snape hated him so much. Potions class ended an hour later. After lunch, the three of them went to Hagrid's appointment. Along the way, they walked through the fields. The sun shone generously on the three of them, making them feel warm and relieved from potions class. Ah! Lauren has spent the past few years in the wilderness, and scenes like this make him more comfortable. He runs a few steps on the grass and stops to pull at unknown weeds and wild flowers. Harry and Ron were also infected by this enthusiasm, running and stopping. At 5 minutes to 3 o'clock, several people rushed to the cabin on the edge of the Forbidden Forest. There was a stone bow and a pair of rubber galoshes in front of the door. Lauren was particularly kind to such a wooden house, and he was the first to knock on the door. Opening the door a crack, revealing a big bearded face, he was stunned for a moment when he saw Lauren, and then he smiled happily when he saw Harry behind Lauren. "Oh, come in quickly, look at me. I'm so busy that I forgot about the appointment." Hagrid pulled the hound back a little and welcomed the three of them into the door. There was only one room in the hut, with hams and pheasants hanging from the ceiling, a copper kettle boiling water in the brazier, and a large bed in the corner with a bedding patchwork of rags. The environment is a bit more dilapidated than the Lorens' house. "Sit down quickly." "You're welcome." Hagrid asked a few people to sit down and let go of the hound. The hound pounced on Ron. Ron was almost frightened and cried, but the hound just licked his ears. Hagrid smiled when he saw this scene. "I forgot to introduce you, this is my friend Yaya." This dog was obviously not as vicious as it looked. Harry and Lauren couldn't help laughing when they saw Ron's embarrassed look. Harry introduced, "This is Ron and Lauren, my friends." Hagrid glanced at it and said with a smile, "It's the Weasley boy again. Your two brothers have tormented me several times. I spent most of my life trying to drive them out of the Forbidden Forest." As Hagrid said this, he took out rock cakes and served them to the three of them. The pancakes made a bang-bang sound when they collided on the dinner plate, and the necks of the three of them were a little stiff. "Try it, Yaya likes it best." Harry and Ron picked up a piece and mustered up the courage to take a bite. Click! Their expressions became painful, and Pansy almost lost his teeth. Looking at the enthusiastic Hagrid, the two of them still pretended to eat it, grinding it bit by bit with their teeth. Listening to the squeaking sound of teeth grinding, Lauren probably understood why Yaya liked to eat this. "Don't dogs like teething sticks?" Lauren held a biscuit in his hand. Not intending to torture himself, he held the biscuit and began to talk about the stairs of Hogwarts. The topic was changed, and Harry also talked about the past few days of class, complaining wildly about Professor Snape's partiality and making things difficult. Hagrid hesitated for a while, wanting to refute Harry, but finally said, "Snape is a professor, he will not target you." "This sounds very hollow." "Ahem." Hagrid started talking about Ron. "How about your brother Charlie? He's very good with animals just like me." The conversation was so stiff that Harry felt he didn't want to talk about the professor. Ron's brother Charlie is engaged in dragon-related work after graduation. He picked out some things he knew. Lauren picked up the Daily Prophet on the table and started browsing. Harry saw the report of the illegal break-in at Gringotts at a glance. Gringotts claimed that the intruder broke through the empty door and that the owner of the vault that day had taken away everything in the vault in advance, so they lost nothing. The end of the report read, "A Gringotts Goblins spokesperson said this afternoon that he could not comment on what exactly was stored in the vault, and it would be best not to interfere in this matter." Lauren looked at it and knew that it was the old guy Dumbledore who had designed to trick Voldemort. But he had a lot to say to the Gringotts bandits. The goblins in Gringotts are all hooligans, right? People go in and out of the place where customers keep their things, and then they say nothing is missing. I warn all customers not to ask around, absolutely. Harry remembered that day as almost the most memorable day in his life. "Hagrid. We were there the day Gringotts was broken into." "Hey? I don't quite remember." Hagrid looked around, but didn't answer directly. Harry secretly kept this in mind. Could it be that the small bag that Hagrid took away from the underground vault of number 713 that day was the target of an intruder? Time passed unknowingly, and a piece of rock cake was not finished after an afternoon of tea, but Lauren fed the rock cake to Yaya while they were not paying attention. Harry went back with questions in his head. What was that bag Hagrid took? Where are you now? Why did Hagrid avoid Snape? Chapter 19. Saturday morning. Some of the freshmen were hanging out in the castle, and some were basking in the sun by the lake. They didn't have heavy academic pressure yet. The new students in Gryffindor gathered together to discuss and summarize the rules of the stairs. Hermione talked the most, and Neville wrote down almost every word in his notebook. He also had a list of passwords for the common room. Lauren and others in the same dormitory have already made a habit of going to the lounge door and opening the door if they don't see Neville before going to bed. Neville is probably waiting outside. Ron put Scabbers in his pocket. Scabbers had been sleeping more and more in the past few days. He slept almost all day except when eating. Ron thought that he might be a little uncomfortable with it. Harry listened intently to everyone discussing how to quickly get to various classrooms, and he recalled what Professor McGonagall said that day when he scolded him and Ron for being late. Perhaps if you two were turned into pocket watches, you could be more punctual. If I turn you into a map, you won't get lost. How could a person at 37 degrees say such cold words? He never wanted to experience it again. At this time Percy, Fred, and George came back from outside together, and they walked straight towards Ron. Ron also saw it and said hello happily. Hey! I thought you all went to Hogsmeade, and I wanted you to bring me some candies. Percy looked pale and said nothing, while George and Fred lifted Ron up and walked out. The two of them said one sentence each, with a tone as if Ron had suffered a disaster. Oh! Poor baby Ronnie! He still doesn't know what's going on. Ron was still a little dazed, so the two of them carried him a certain distance before they started shouting, "Let me go! Be careful, I'll tell Mom, you guys are good to watch." Percy was behind, beckoning Lauren and Harry to follow, but said nothing. Harry and Lauren looked at each other. Lauren had some suspicion in his mind and didn't say anything. When the people in the lounge saw it, they thought the Weasley brothers were joking and watched the group of people walk out with smiles. After leaving the lounge, Professor McGonagall was waiting outside the lounge with a glass jar. The twins put Ron down and said in unison, "Report, complete the task." Professor McGonagall waved her wand towards Ron's pocket, causing Scabbers to float up and fall into the jar, and then the jar quickly turned into a fully enclosed sphere, leaving only a vent. Ron stared at it for a while. "Merlin's beard, you just want to catch a mouse." The twins patted Ron and said, "Mom and Dad are already waiting for us in the principal's office. Let's go quickly." Harry and Ron followed the group to the principal's office full of doubts. When entering the door, Lauren noticed that the portraits in the principal's office were turned over and facing inward, with no front side exposed. Snape stood in the corner, and Principal Dumbledore was comforting Mr. and Mrs. Weasley. This was the first time Lauren and Harry met Ron's parents, both of whom had the unifying red hair of the Weasley family. Ron's father is Arthur Weasley. He is thin, tall, and wears glasses. He keeps saying, "I should have noticed something was wrong a long time ago. It's all my fault." Ron's mother, Molly Weasley, was a somewhat stout woman who was crying uncontrollably and saying, "My poor Ronnie, that damn dark wizard." Seeing a group of people coming in, Molly stood up and rushed to Ron, holding him tightly in her arms. "Fortunately, my Ronnie is fine, that's great. Thanks to Dumbledore." Ron felt his mother's excitement, and her body was still shaking uncontrollably. Ron was a little at a loss at this time and still had a lot of doubts, but he didn't ask and hugged his mother quietly, trying to give her some comfort. Arthur also came over. Even though Dumbledore kept saying it was okay, he didn't show a relaxed smile until he saw that the children were all well. Arthur noticed Harry and the scar on his forehead. "You must be Harry, you have grown so big." After hearing this, Molly looked at Harry and reached out to touch Harry's face, but in the end she couldn't. She hugged Harry in her arms. Poor child. Harry felt a kind of closeness. He didn't resist and felt the warmth silently. It would be great if his mother was there too. Dumbledore also came over and said to them, "This is Lauren, he has a pair of eyes that are good at discovery. Thanks to him, otherwise we would still be in the dark." Except for Ron, all the Weasleys smiled gratefully at Lauren, who smiled back. Snape was a little disgusted with this pretentious scene and interrupted, "Now, let's see the true face of this gutter rat." Professor McGonagall poured out the mouse Scabbers and placed it on the floor. Dumbledore held a simple wand and activated the four-pointed star, and the yellow light gradually spread throughout the mouse. Ron thought, "It's finally yellow." The mouse gradually expanded and elongated, and finally as the yellow light faded, it turned into a short, fat man with a somewhat bald head and grey hair. Harry's scar hurt a little again, but it was so slight that it went away for a moment, and he almost thought it was an illusion. Lauren looked at this man and felt a strange sense of familiarity in his heart. He thought it might be because he had seen the movie, so he didn't think much about it. Ron and Percy looked at this scene with the same pale and pained expressions. Ron also had strong nausea. The pet rat he once liked very much, kissed, and even held in his arms while sleeping, turned out to be a greasy, balding middle-aged man. Professor McGonagall next to her asked in surprise, "Peter Pettigrew?" She recognized her former student. Professor Snape's gloomy voice sounded, "It's unbelievable. 10 years ago, Peter Pettigrew was blown up by his good friend and only one finger was left. I didn't expect that he would be hiding in Weasley's house for more than 10 years. When Lauren heard this, some images came to mind, the blown-off roofs, the torn streets, and a sky-blue dress. It's vague and I don't know where it came from. There must be something interesting here. We need a little magic potion to discover the truth of the matter. Freshly prepared truth serum, just use a few drops." Dumbledore showed a pensive expression, but finally did not agree. "Peter once won the Order of Merlin, first class. Everyone thinks he is a hero. We can't do this. Professor McGonagall, please inform the people at the Ministry of Magic. What happened back then is still unknown. There's a person involved." Dumbledore had been planning something since Lauren told him that an animagus had been lurking in the Weasley family for more than 10 years. First, little stars were planted on the mouse so that he could not escape or do anything like jumping over the wall. Write a letter to tell the Arthurs and ask Professor McGonagall to communicate with Percy and the twins to make sure everyone in the Weasley family is okay. Today, I plan to teach Harry a lesson about dark wizards. Even Snape's potion was ready. As a result, things became complicated. There may be hidden secrets about what happened back then that he didn't even know about. Dumbledore said that the rest would be left to him and the professors, and that the Weasley family would wait for the news and would give them an answer. Both Arthur and Molly fully trusted Dumbledore and said nothing. The children were still children after all, and they were still stunned when they walked out of the office. Professor McGonagall gave the Weasley brothers 2 days off to calm down, as long as they came back on Monday. Molly invites Harry and Lauren to spend the weekend at the Burrow, but the two agree that it's better not to interrupt the family reunion. Harry was more confused. He also wanted to ask Dumbledore about the things Hagrid had not finished about his parents. Did Ron's parents know his parents? What happened to that dark wizard? Did Lauren already know? Harry planned to ask Lauren. From here on, the plot started to get messed up. I always felt like there was something wrong with my writing, but I couldn't tell anything when I read it. My friend said that my foreshadowing was too dry, so I went back and fixed it. If you are watching, please feel free to leave your comments. Chapter 20. By lunchtime Ron had followed the Weasleys home. Lauren felt that when things got to this point, Dumbledore could do the rest. In fact, after he told Dumbledore what had happened, he took no further part in it. Harry put the bread into his mouth and asked, "Lauren, you found out?" Boom! There was a sudden explosion not far away. Simo's face was blown into a ball of black, and his hair stood up, which was very funny. Ha 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 ha! Dean Thomas laughed so hard that he couldn't even see his teeth, even though he was so embarrassed most of the time. Dean Thomas is a black guy from Gryffindor who is very good friends with Seamus. Whenever he sees this situation, he always laughs the loudest. This is not the first time I have seen this scene. When Seamus tries unfamiliar magic, he always explodes something. It's not very powerful and won't cause much damage, but the face is always dark. Lauren's attention was attracted. He approached Seamus with a chicken leg and asked with great interest, "What kind of curse are you talking about?" Dean Thomas answered first. He tried to turn water into wine, but it exploded again. Lauren turned his head, with an expression on his face, "Boy, you are lucky. I have a peerless martial arts here that I want to entrust to you. The task of saving the world and upholding justice will be entrusted to you." He said seriously, "Ximo, have you ever thought that you have a unique talent in this area?" Seamus wiped his face with a tissue and rolled his eyes at Lauren. "If you want, I can give you this talent in exchange." "Hey hey hey!" Lauren said seductively, "I know a cool spell that suits your temperament very well." Next to him, Dean also showed a curious expression, "Can I try too?" A few people quickly filled their stomachs and headed towards the edge of the forbidden forest, arm in arm. Harry was speechless as he looked at the people walking away. He hadn't finished asking his question yet. Draco on the other long table looked at Harry and mocked, "Look, the famous Harry Potter has been left alone." Harry was fed up with this man. From the moment he got on the train, he arrogantly wanted to get to know him and looked down on Ron. The relationship was forged from then on, and Draco would say something taunting Harry whenever he had the chance. But fortunately, the Snake House and the Lion House only have potions class together, Harry thought, ignored Draco, and quickly returned to the lounge. Lauren, Seamus, and Dean arrived at the edge of the forbidden forest. Seamus looked at the woods and asked, "Why do we come here? The professors don't allow us to enter the forbidden forest." Lauren was quite satisfied with the environment here and did not take the two of them inside again. He explained the reason to them, "Because there is no problem if there is more noise here. I'll show you something fun." Lauren picked up a few branches and built a small door. Seamus and Dean were a little confused. Lauren walked to the side, "The door is open." He didn't cast the spell with all his strength, and the spell was a clear door opening instead of a weird pronunciation caused by correction. A piece of red light as thick as a finger flew out from the tip of the wand and hit the simple wooden door. Boom! The branches were blown far away, leaving a dark mass on the ground. Seamus and Dean looked at each other, their eyes radiating surprise, and they both shouted, "Cool!" Dean asked, "What kind of magic is this? Is it passed down in your family?" Simo was also very happy and pretended to be reserved, "This is indeed in line with my temperament. I can learn from you." Dean quickly followed, "I want to learn too, I want to learn too." Lauren despised these two people who didn't like to learn. If you two have read the book Standard Spells in advance, you will know that this is just an outdated door-opening spell. The two of them pretended not to hear the first half of the sentence, and Simo sighed, "This can indeed open the door." He was so happy that he swore on Sir Nicholas's head that he would learn the spell and use it well. There are no 11-year-old children who don't like two kicks, not to mention that Lauren wants to play RPG for them. He urged the two of them, "Come and build some doors. You need this to practice spells." The three people built a circle with wooden blocks, branches, and stones. Through nearly 20 simple little doors, Lauren explained to the two the key points of spell casting, the pronunciation and intonation of the spell, and the gestures of waving the wand. Then the edge of the forbidden forest began to ring continuously, "The door is open, the door is open, the door is open." It didn't take long for Seamus to blow up the small black wooden door. But Dean could only emit a faint light. "I can do it! I can do it!" Seamus waved his hands and flew up with joy. He had never learned a spell so quickly and achieved the desired effect. Lauren didn't know if Seamus had really learned how to open doors, or if he just activated his talent and could achieve this effect no matter what he said. "Dean is still going on, the door opens, the door opens." Damn it, he looked enviously at Seamus' natural talent, which he used to laugh at. The two had fun casting spells. Seamus quickly became proficient, and Dean was able to shake the wooden door a little. Lauren began to teach Seamus the spell to correct his weird pronunciation, syllable by syllable, and the progress was not very fast. But Seamus was in high spirits and remembered every syllable very clearly. Then comes the key to casting a spell: think of the target as a door you want to walk through. Seamus tried this weird syllable, and then released the magic spell as Lauren said. The first few times were a bit laggy and he couldn't explode anything. Seamus felt a little regretful, but when he saw that Dean was still there next door, he felt happy again. When he tried again, Simo was able to explode regular shapes on the small wooden door, spreading out from the center point to the surroundings, instead of being a big black mass like before. Lauren can also confirm that Simo has indeed started, rather than his talent being activated. With Dean's background sound, Lauren and Seamus began to attack the surrounding trees. Seamus could only blast a layer of carbon color on the trees, and Lauren did not have to use all his strength to penetrate the trees. To put it more profoundly, he has a sharp weapon and a murderous intention. On the low end, if a child in his early 10 years has a wooden stick in his hand, then all the flowers and plants on the roadside will not be higher than his knees. The two people looked like they were holding fireworks. Boom! And bang! Boom! And bang! Dean felt that he was being squeezed out. While opening the door, he gritted his teeth and comforted himself, "I'm not envious, I'm not envious." I don't know how long the three of them had been playing, but Lauren suddenly heard the sound of a dog barking, and then Hagrid followed Fang out of the woods. There was darkness everywhere on the ground and tree trunks. Hagrid's face was also dark. Fortunately, no animals were injured. He scolded, "Which college are you from?" "It's your boy." Seeing Lauren, he remembered that this was Harry's friend. He also saw the badges on the chests of several people's robes. He understood that they belonged to Gryffindor. He knew that only a Gryffindor could do this. It turns out that he is also a Gryffindor. Tisk, what is this inexplicable pride about? Hagrid reached out and grabbed the clothes at the back of Seamus and Dean's necks, picked them up and walked to the hut, and said to Lauren, "Just in time, you come too, I'll find something for you to do." Chapter 21. Hagrid was too big, and he was dressed like a wild man in the woods. Seamus and Dean were a little scared, but Lauren seemed to know this man, so they just let Hagrid do it, with expressions of despair on their faces. Lauren walked beside him with a smile and introduced several people to each other. "The person on your right hand is Seamus Finnegan, Harry and I's roommate, and the person on your left is Dean Thomas, our classmate. And this big guy is Hagrid, Harry's friend." Hagrid carried the two children effortlessly and said as he walked, "Little guys, don't be like the Weasley brothers. I can't stand the torment of so many people." With that said, he threw the two of them up and caught them again. Seamus and Dean screamed in fright, but after a few repetitions they began to enjoy it, cheering loudly every time they were thrown in the air. "Oh." Hagrid smiled and said, "I knew you would like it. Yaya also liked playing with me like this when he was little." Lauren felt like something was wrong. Hagrid took a few people to the hut and put them down. Here were neatly piled up chopped tree trunks, each one as thick as 2 or 3 Lauren's waists. Hagrid carried an axe as big as Lauren's and began to split the wood into strips of firewood, asking them to help stack the firewood. Hagrid chopped it alone, and Lauren and the others stacked it up, but Hagrid was much faster than them. The three of them were chatting and collecting firewood. "I heard that there are centaurs and unicorns in the Forbidden Forest." Dean wanted to see them. Hagrid swung his axe and split a tree stump. "They are not easy to mess with. You'd better stay away. There are many animals here that are very dangerous to you. Listen to the principal and professors, and it's best not to get close to the Forbidden Forest." Seamus and Dean began to ask about the Forbidden Forest. Lauren paddled for a while, then said, "I'm so tired, I need to rest for a while." Then he ran to the side to play with Yaya. Seamus and Dean flew in Hagrid's hands all the way, and became familiar with Hagrid a lot. They were no longer afraid, and soon they started playing with Lauren. Hagrid looked at the boys, laughed and cursed a few times, but did not stop them, as long as they did not continue to blow up the forest. Until the sun set low, dyeing the clouds at the end of the forest goose yellow. Hagrid finished chopping all the firewood, and most of it was scattered on the ground. He planned to pick it up later. He straightened up and shouted to a few little ghosts who were covered in mud from playing, "You guys are having dinner at my place, so you'd better go back to the castle." Thinking of the rock cake last time, Lauren replied, "First, go back to the castle first. The professor will be worried when it gets dark." Seamus and Dean nodded in agreement. In fact, they thought it would be great to have dinner in a forest cabin. But Lauren clapped both men's hands, and they took the hint. Hagrid walked into the room, took out a few small things and handed them to Lauren and the other three, one each. "The teeth left behind by the molting of Aragog's children will be your reward for today. This is a good thing, and it can be worth a lot of galleons when sold as a potion or alchemy material." But the three of them didn't know its value. After learning that Aragog was an acromantula, they just thought it was cool. The three refused Hagrid's escort and flew back to the castle happily. Lauren also forgot to ask why it was necessary to get so much firewood since it was only September. At the Gryffindor table at dinner, Dean happily recounted his experiences today, even though it was already the third time. "Lauren first took us to practice crackling and powerful magic spells by the Forbidden Forest. Hermione was very interested in this charm. We blew down a tree as high as a 2-story building and alarmed the 4-meter-tall giant who lives in the Forbidden Forest." "Oh!" the friends around him exclaimed in shame. This giant turned out to be a friend of Harry and Lauren. He invited us to visit his home deep in the Forbidden Forest. "Oh! Before we leave, give us the teeth of the acromantula as a gift." Simo took out a tooth necklace strung with a rope around his neck. "Oh!" Lauren was deep in thought. He was doubting himself. Is this how he lived today? It sounds like it is, but why does it feel like something is wrong? Harry was so jealous that he couldn't recognize it. He cut the mutton chops on the dinner plate with a knife and fork, as if he was cutting someone's meat. Obviously I met Hagrid first, and I know Hagrid better. Thinking of the boring time this afternoon, Ron went home. Lauren and Seamus went out to play without him, and he was alone in the lounge, unable to find anything to do. I went to the library to study, but was scolded by Hermione. Thinking about how much fun other people were having, I cut even harder with the knife. It's all Malfoy's fault. I could have kept up with them at that time. It's all Malfoy's fault. Neville saw Harry, who was smelling of thick black air, and quietly moved a little to the side. At night, Lauren, Harry, Seamus, and Neville were lying on the bed in the dormitory. Everyone felt that without Ron, the dormitory seemed to be missing something and it was much quieter. Let's chat. Harry still had questions to ask. I can see the animagus with my eyes. I saw something was wrong with Scabbers, and I told Principal Dumbledore. You also know what happened next. Lauren fired a series of combos at the speed of light. The shock made Seamus and Neville's heads spin. Oh, no, why does your Hogwarts seem different from ours? We haven't finished opening the map yet, and you're already fighting a mini-boss. Harry was shocked at how Lauren knew what he was going to ask, and was about to ask, why? I can also read minds. Lauren directly interrupted Harry's forward swing and hit a critical hit. Really or not, Harry thought subconsciously. Really? After that, Lauren's set of right-click, shift, and E skills left Harry confused. After finishing a set, Lauren got off the plane at the speed of light. It's time to go to bed. Good night, everyone. After saying this, he covered himself with a quilt and ignored the people around him. Harry's processor was about to explode. He didn't believe it intuitively, but this was the wizarding world, what if it was true? And he just did answer the question in my mind. Seamus felt that Lauren could teach him the mysterious explosion spells during the day, and it seemed that being able to read minds was not unacceptable. As for Neville, he believed whatever Lauren said and was simply shocked. At this time, Lauren was covered with a quilt, laughing so hard that his whole body was shaking, but he couldn't laugh out loud, and his stomach was a little sore. Elementary school student. I will directly use psychological warfare to burn and smoke your CPU. Can you sleep tonight? The moonlight shone into the room through the window. After an unknown amount of time, Neville fell asleep first, followed by Seamus, while Harry's CPU was still burning. Seeing the moonlight, Lauren thought of Grandpa Bates. Regarding the Wolfsbane potion, with the credit of uncovering Peter Pettigrew this time, he directly confessed to Dumbledore. For Dumbledore's sake, not to mention learning how to make it, at least there was a high chance of purchasing it. He began to plan what he wanted to do. He wanted to select a few highly practical key exercises on the magic spell, and practice until it was like the door opens, almost achieving the effect he had in mind. For defense, use the Iron Armor Curse or Stop Curse, and for attack, choose the one that suits you best. There is no specific option for this. Harry's single move Expelliarmus went from the low-end game of gold and silver to the first place in the national server. He highlighted a unique skill, which is passed down from female to male in the Weasley family. The Transfiguration Curse requires hard work. Whether it is Dumbledore or Professor McGonagall, the Transfiguration Curse has unexpected and wonderful effects when practiced deeply. It depends on the situation whether Animagus should be learned or not. There are also Calling God Guard and Apparition. These spells will be of great use in the later stages. As well as the practice of alchemy, those two books are very important. Lauren tried his best to learn the huge prerequisite knowledge system and strive to seize the opportunity of the Sorcerer's Stone incident. It would be best if he could have a good chat with Nico Flamel. Chapter 22. The next morning, Harry's eyes were a little dark. During breakfast, Lauren leisurely tasted black tea. The food conditions at Hogwarts were indeed good. Harry looked at Lauren several times, hesitating to speak, and almost couldn't even eat. Lauren was a little helpless, he was really an honest child. When Harry glanced at Lauren again, Lauren couldn't help it anymore and put down the teacup. Stop looking, I teased you last night, I can't read minds at all. Harry relaxed a little after hearing this, and didn't know how much he believed it. I'm going to the library. Do you want to come with me? Lauren wanted to make a study plan for himself. Harry didn't really want to study, but Ron wasn't here and he had nothing else to do alone. Oh, well, it just so happens that I haven't started my homework yet. Lauren reached out and wrapped a few egg tarts in paper and put them in his pocket. Which subject? Harry was inexplicably proud, every subject. An egg tart was not held firmly and fell out of the dinner plate. The library of Hogwarts is on the second floor of the castle. The bookshelves are connected to the bookshelves, extending from one end to the other. The bookshelves are getting smaller and smaller, but there is no end in sight. Lauren felt that magic similar to the traceless stretching spell should have been used here. The area inside was much larger than the outside, with almost tens of thousands of books. The library of Hogwarts has been passed down from generation to generation by students and teachers. There are many unique copies and books that have stopped being printed by the outside world. The school board also allocates a special fund every year to purchase new books. It can be said that apart from the Ministry of Magic, there is no richer collection of books than this. There was no one next to the bookshelf within a certain range. Lauren saw thick iron chains extending from the covers of several books. The other end of the iron chain was connected to the bookshelf, as if growing out of the bookshelf. This was to prevent anyone from reading it. There were also several books, with lights of different colors flashing in his eyes, and there were obvious traces of magic on them. That should be the restricted book area. There are a lot of magics that Lauren wanted, including fire and legilimency. However, the professor's authorization and credentials are required to borrow. No matter how talented a first-year student is, there is no reason to borrow books from the restricted area unless they want to be put on Dumbledore's key list. Harry took out the homework he had accumulated and began to catch up. Lauren felt that this was probably because Ron had led him into trouble. There wasn't much homework in the first week, so Lauren took the time between classes to finish it. Fortunately, at least at this time, Harry hadn't learned how to copy homework. In fact, if Lauren hadn't dragged Harry to the library, Harry would have started each class the day before the homework was due. He felt that it would be more efficient. Lauren selected some necessary books on the bookshelf: Expand by Gamp's Basic Transformation Laws, Basic Material Properties of Potions, and Basic Principles of Simple Magic Spells. These correspond to the basics of transformation spells, potions, and spells respectively. So basic knowledge is like the relationship between abelian groups and addition within 10. King 1's experience: after establishing a general knowledge system from the bottom, it will be easier to learn. Hermione arrived in the library soon after, which did not surprise Lauren or Harry. But she didn't read the textbook or any information. It looked like a novel. She buried her head in the book and smiled a little from time to time. Lauren was drowsy from chewing a large tome. When he looked up, he saw Hermione staring at the book with bright eyes. Occasionally, she smiled and showed her cute front teeth, and then she closed her mouth again. Wandering with Werewolves. Lauren read it directly as he looked at the cover of the book. Hermione looked up, with a happy expression on her face. Yes, I saw you bought this book when I was at Flourish and Blott's bookstore. It is also available in the library, so I looked for it and took a look. Lauren was a little surprised. I was hoping to find some werewolf-related books and find out some information about werewolves. Later I found that this book had no content at all. Hermione frowned. She liked this book very much. She couldn't speak too loudly in the library. She leaned closer and asked, "Why do you say that?" "The story in it is very exciting and it is adapted from the author's real experience." Lauren noticed that the little witch had thick eyebrows and distanced herself. There is not much knowledge about werewolves in it. Most of it describes or highlights how wise and powerful the author is. After a pause, he added, "If this experience hadn't been so wonderful, this book would be terrible." The author's narcissism almost came out of the book. Lauren didn't say that even those wonderful experiences were deceived and stolen by Lockhart. When he bought the book, he knew that Lockhart was a liar, but he still hoped to learn some useful werewolf knowledge from the book to help Grandpa Bates. "It's a pity that I was almost blinded by the hot man's smile." Hermione thought about it for a moment. She had just been immersed in the story and didn't feel it. Now that she jumped out and read it, it was really as if the author was praising himself repeatedly, and even the smiling illustrations in the book became dazzling. Hermione was a little helpless to find that she couldn't refute it. It seemed like this was the case. She read day and night and finally found a way to relax. Now she can't read the book anymore, and she is even a little annoyed with Lauren. "What are you reading?" Lauren spread his hands to show them. Seeing that they were all content that was only learned in senior grades, Hermione began to guide again. "These books are all content that will be exposed later. We should learn the things in the textbooks first." Lauren also tried to change Hermione's concept. It's not enough to just study by heart. Understanding the principles and sorting out the knowledge system will make learning faster and easier. This touches on the professor's authority in Hermione's mind. Do you know magic better than the professor? Her voice was a little sharp. Then why doesn't the professor teach these first? Mrs. Pinksy appeared behind the two of them in an instant and gave them a tap on the back of their heads. Get out. This is not the place for you to quarrel. And drove the two of them out of the library. Harry said that fortunately it was not a topic he could participate in. Why do we think so much? The teacher can teach us how to learn. I don't understand, these people are really weird. Ah. He was so sleepy, Harry yawned. He didn't sleep well last night. Otherwise, I should go back and catch up on my sleep first, and then talk about my homework. With this thought, I will no longer be able to do my homework. The atmosphere between Lauren and Hermione, who were kicked out, was still tense. Lauren thought it was strange. If you don't agree with me, just say it. Why are you so angry? Hermione also felt strange. She obviously shouldn't be so excited, but she couldn't help it. The two separated at the top of the stairs, and Hermione couldn't read the book for a while. She wandered around the castle unconsciously. When she reached the third floor, she found that she had come to a room full of trophies, medals, and other things. Hermione looked all the way over. The Quidditch cup and the house cup were polished to shine and neatly placed in the display cabinet. There were also group photos of the players from the previous 4 college Quidditch teams. Among the many unfamiliar faces, the figure of a girl caught her attention. The girl in the photo sensed Hermione's gaze and jumped up happily and waved to her. Hermione knew that this was because developing potion was added to the photo, and recorded the girl's movements at that time, but this was Professor McGonagall. Although the girl in the photo is younger and has a vitality that is not seen in Professor McGonagall now, she can still be easily recognized. Hermione was very surprised. She didn't expect that Professor McGonagall was a Quidditch player when she was a student. She was so energetic and unrestrained, which was completely different from now. After stopping in front of the photo for a while, Hermione moved forward, and she soon made a new discovery. It was a small gold-plated shield, inlaid on another larger one. On the small shield was written, Seeker. James Potter. 1971. Chapter 23. Lauren chewed the tome until he felt sleepy and didn't want to read any more. He planned to go to the 8th floor to see the mysterious room of requirement. Corridor on the 8th floor. Lauren looked at the paintings one by one, and one of them, a portrait of a wizard teaching 6 trolls to dance, caught his attention. At first, the troll was still dancing gracefully with the big stick, but soon it became impatient and began to beat the wizard with the big stick without sparing any effort. Lauren almost burst into laughter watching this interesting scene. Lauren walked back and forth in front of the wall opposite the portrait, thinking that I needed a clean and tidy internet cafe box with a sofa and a 4090 graphics card. A white door appeared on the wall, and Lauren exclaimed, he had come to the right place. When you open the door and go in, you will find a computer, a sofa, and bright lights, all of which perfectly meet Lauren's expectations. Lauren was in a daze for a moment. He pressed the computer's power button, but there was no response. He pressed it a few more times, but the result was the same. Sure enough, it didn't work. This room was just an appearance created by the room of requirement using magic according to Lauren's idea. It was not really a computer. The magic principles involved here are beyond Lauren's imagination. Mind reading, using magic to manifest, can also complete details that I am not sure about. Lauren suspected that the builder was one of the Big Four, not Slytherin, and his Chamber of Secrets was not here. Gryffindor doesn't seem to be a character who can build a secret chamber. He should be one of Ravenclaw or Hufflepuff. Now was not the time to inquire about the builder. He exited the room and began to imagine that I needed a room to hide my things. He repeated this several times before pushing the door open and entering. What comes into view are mountains of books, layers of shabby furniture, broken metal utensils, armor, and various magic items. The surrounding magic items emitted scattered lights of various colors in Lauren's eyes, but at this time Lauren's vision was occupied by a bright blue color. Even across several mountains of debris, he could see it. You can see the blue light coming from behind that thing. Walking towards the source of the blue light, bypassing several pairs of mountains of debris and mountains of books, Lauren saw a pair of armor with a crown on his head. The crown is in the shape of an eagle with spread wings. The feathers are dotted with scattered blue gems, and a line of text is engraved below, "Extraordinary wisdom is the greatest wealth of mankind." This was what Lauren was looking for, the diadem of Ravenclaw. It had been made into a Horcrux by Voldemort more than 10 years ago. After Voldemort applied for the defense against the Dark Arts professor for the second time and was rejected by Dumbledore, he was hidden here by Voldemort. The movie seems to tell you about setting fire to it, but it doesn't explain what effect it has. However, compared to the seductive diary, the poisonous gaunt ring, the inferi, and the poison-guarded locket, it was hard for Lauren to believe that the crown hidden by Voldemort himself had no means at all. Now Lauren is just a first-year wizard. His life is at stake, and he doesn't want to touch this crown at all. I silently noted the location here, and when the time is right in the future, I would notify Dumbledore to come and recycle it. After making a plan, Lauren began to look at other things in the room. This is what Hogwarts students and teachers have hidden for thousands of years. There are sundries, weapons, books, and Lauren even saw love letters. Looking through the looking glass, the broomsticks were in a mess, and some were even broken into 2 pieces, showing the weathered fractures. Lauren carefully avoided these magic items, and did not touch them with a cautious attitude that his life was at stake. Who knew what they could do? Picking out a torn book that looked very dated, Lauren pulled it out from under a stool leg, and the cover fell off. This is a publication that was printed in batches. It is very old and the handwriting on it is a little unclear, but Lauren can still make out some of the contents carefully. The printed ones are some basic spells, some of which are correct, the same as what Lauren is learning now. But others are outdated and erroneous content that has been overturned and has long since been deleted from all books. These erroneous contents were circled with a quill pen, and some conjectures and doubts were written below. Lauren speculated that this was a textbook from Hogwarts a long time ago, and a talented student began to modify the textbook from then on. A passage on the last page also proves Lauren's conjecture. Family is like mud, Hogwarts is my dawn. I don't hate my insensitive mother and ignorant sister, I just hope that they. The ink on the back has been blurred, but the signature at the end is familiar to Lauren, Miranda Gorshak, the author of the Standard Spells series of books. She has overturned hundreds of erroneous theories about magic, written books that have been translated into 72 languages, is the author of almost all magic school textbooks, and has appeared in a chocolate frog cartoon. This is the handwriting of a legendary witch who showed amazing magical talent since she was a child decades ago. Lauren looked through the books scattered everywhere. Some of them were old published reading materials, and a large part of the books were manuscripts. Lauren had seen many of the names of the authors of these manuscripts in the textbooks. They left behind these manuscripts while they were studying at Hogwarts or teaching at Hogwarts. Some were published, some were not. But the same thing is, the content is basically incomprehensible to Lauren. He was sure there were treasures buried here, spells invented by many talented wizards over the past thousands of years, magical conjectures that had not been verified by anyone, and the derivation of magical theories. But Lauren is only a little wizard who has been in school for a week. Besides being unable to understand, it feels really depressing to enter the treasure mountain and come back empty-handed. Worry, let's lay the foundation first. In the afternoon, Lauren practiced the transfiguration spell by the lake. He repeatedly tried to turn a fist-sized stone into a wooden deck chair. Until I felt that I could no longer cast the spell, and it would only turn the stone into a slate. Lauren just lay on it, basking in the sun until the sun went down, making him feel lazy all over. Ron returned to school before dinner, and his family had never been so accommodating to him. Even when he quarreled with Ginny, his mother scolded Ginny instead of him. The happy weekend allowed the heart that had been tortured by Scabbers to recover. Harry slept until now, and he swore he just wanted to take a nap and then get up and do his homework. As a result, it was night all of a sudden, but even if he had to choose again, Harry would still choose sleep over the transfiguration homework he just wrote the title of. It was so comfortable. The two of them were in a good mood and chatting enthusiastically. From the dining table to the lounge, they played several rounds of wizard chess. Although it was Ron who tortured Harry. But both enjoyed it. Until he went to bed for the night, Harry was still asking whether he should leave the night before being defeated in the last game. Lauren asked casually, "Harry, have you finished your transfiguration homework?" Harry and Ron's eyes suddenly turned frightened. Help! Chapter 24. Morning, Gryffindor table in the dining room. Lauren took a sip of orange juice, swallowed the bread in his mouth, stood up and stretched beautifully. Yet, the new week starts with a wonderful transfiguration class. Lauren was full of energy. Next to him were two great enemies, Harry and Ron, who stayed up late last night with Lauren's transfiguration homework for reference. Harry was okay and had enough sleep during the day, but Ron had dark bags under his eyes and looked very lethargic. Several people came to the Transfiguration classroom in different states. Professor McGonagall collected the homework for correction in the evening and began to check everyone's progress in turning matches into needles. Several classmates, including Lauren, have been able to turn matches into needles, and Hermione has even made matches thin and pointed. She wants to become an outstanding witch like Professor McGonagall, and has put in a lot of effort. At the end of class, Professor McGonagall left another 3 inches of homework. At noon, on the dining table, Lauren cut a lemon, squeezed the juice onto the lamb chops, cut off a piece and put it in his mouth. His eyes narrowed in contentment, and he showed a satisfied smile. This eating scene was so tempting that Harry and Ron swallowed their saliva and followed suit. Hermione turned to look at Lauren. "You are obviously better at transfiguration than me, why don't you let Professor McGonagall know?" The owl delivering the package flew in through the skylight. Lauren looked up, swallowed another piece of mutton chop, and answered happily, "Because the cute little cat never asks why." Hermione pinched the knife in her hand. Seeing Lauren's eyes twitching, he quickly explained, "There is no reason. I just don't want to attract attention. It's because of my personality." Hermione didn't have time to ask. "Look, Neville received a memory ball!" Dean shouted. Hermione was also attracted and leaned over to look at the memory ball. "I've heard that if you forget something, the memory ball will turn red in your hand." As he spoke, red mist emerged from the memory ball in Neville's hand. Neville said calmly, "I also know that I forgot something, but the problem is, I can't remember what I forgot." Lauren was very interested. "Can other people use it too?" Neville handed the memory ball that turned red to Lauren, but it turned even redder. Lauren asked doubtfully, "Is this broken?" Hermione reached for it and the memory ball quickly returned to normal. "It seems that some people have forgotten something like Neville," the girl said cheerfully. Lauren was wondering what he had forgotten until he returned to the lounge, and finally came to the conclusion, the memory ball is an IQ tax. At this time, on a high mountain pasture, an old man with a white beard was looking into the woods. He was expecting an owl to suddenly appear. This expectation had been going on for many days. The old man thought to himself, "I haven't written a letter for so long. When that brat comes back, I will make his ass bloom." Everyone discovered that there was an extra notice in the common room, one with good news and one with bad news. The good news is that flying lessons start on Thursday, the bad news is that the Gryffindor students will be taking them together with the Slytherin students. The freshmen got excited and started to show off. Seamus said he spent much of his childhood flying around the wilderness on a broomstick. Ron spent several days telling everyone around him about his Quidditch knowledge, bragging that he once flew up on Charlie's broom and almost hit a hang glider. Malfoy is a step up in this version, dodging a helicopter on a broomstick. Harry and Hermione became anxious during these stories. Harry was very worried that if he made a fool of himself on a broomstick in front of Malfoy, he would be ridiculed by Malfoy and even whipped repeatedly. Harry learned the term whip corpse from Lauren, and he thought it was very appropriate. Hermione began to read through all the introductory flying books she could find in the library, but it was of little use. She couldn't tell how to fly from the books, although she had never tried it. Lauren tried hard not to laugh while listening to all kinds of bizarre stories. The bragging people couldn't even eat Harry's exhaust even if they were tied together. He himself didn't really care about flying. Whether he was good at flying on a broomstick or not didn't matter. He wasn't very interested in Quidditch. If he needed to travel, there were more convenient and faster ways. In this way, Lauren tried various methods on the Transfiguration charm, hugged his thighs in the herbology class, tried new spells in the charms class, was challenged in the potions class, and fell asleep in the history of magic class. "In my spare time, I spent time in the library reading tomes and basking in the sun by the lake. There is no big goal, just study when you should study. The days are dull but very fulfilling. Lauren enjoys such days very much." Thursday afternoon, the long-awaited flying lesson. The teacher in class is Professor Huochi. He has short grey hair, yellow eyes, speaks short and powerfully, and holds a whistle. He really looks like a physical education teacher. Logically speaking, this is indeed a physical education teacher. In the open space, Gryffindor and Slytherin students were divided into 2 teams, each with a broomstick beside them. "Stretch out your right hand and place it on top of the broom handle," Mrs. Hooch shouted from the front, "then say, 'Get up.'" Harry started quickly, but Ron shouted too loudly and the broom handle hit him directly in the nose. Ouch! Ron shouted in pain. Several people nearby laughed happily. Hey! Still not friends? Ron looked at his roommates complainingly. Except for Harry and Malfoy, everyone else was pretty much the same, and it took them a while to get their brooms in hand. The same goes for Lauren, who doesn't seem to have much talent for flying. Hermione and Neville were the last two. This result made Hermione a little frustrated. She originally wanted to be a witch like Professor McGonagall, and had great expectations for Quidditch and flying. Professor McGonagall is very good at flying, but she has no talent in this area. Then Mrs. Hooch showed them how to ride on a broom without falling off their heads. Malfoy made some cool gestures and was scolded by Mrs. Hooch, which made Harry secretly happy and made Malfoy even more angry. After adjusting everyone's posture, Mrs. Hooch said, "Okay, as soon as I whistle, everyone will kick their legs off the ground and push hard. Hold the broom steady, rise a few feet, and then lean forward slightly. Fall vertically back to the ground." Lauren has been watching Neville. Neville is a timid little fat guy who forgets things easily, but he is kind and helpful. After several classes, Lauren asked Neville to help bring books back to the dormitory. Neville always happily agreed. He seemed to think that this was a sign of Lauren's trust in him, and he enjoyed this trust very much. In the last potions class, the way Neville was in so much pain that he couldn't get up was very impressive. This kind little fat guy doesn't have to be so unlucky, Lauren thought to himself. Listen to my whistle, 3, 2, 1. Neville was so nervous that he jumped out. Before the broom could fly a few inches, Lauren grabbed Neville's robe, ripped it off and threw him to the ground. The broom flew up into the sky for a distance, then fell vertically, hit the tree, and broke into 2 pieces. Neville was sweating coldly when he saw it. He suspected that if it hadn't been for Lauren, it might have been him who was broken in half, and now his clothes were just stained. The classmates around me were also shocked to see this. Neville kept repeating to Lauren, "Thank you, thank you, thank you." Dean and Seamus picked up Neville's memory ball, handed it to him, and then kept comforting Neville. It took a long time to calm down. Mrs. Hooch did not blame Neville. She got a new broom, but Neville was unwilling to fly again. So the others' flying lessons continued, with Neville watching. In fact, many people wanted to give up after seeing the scene just now, but they didn't say it out loud. Hermione felt uneasy, as her flying talent didn't seem to be very good, but she gritted her teeth and continued with the class. After taking off and landing several times vertically, everyone felt relieved. Neville just had an accident and the broomstick was not that dangerous. Mrs. Hooch asked the students to fly freely and slowly in the open space, with the height no higher than the 3rd floor window. Then she came over to comfort Neville and tried to persuade him to continue learning. Neville just kept shaking his head. Chapter 25. In the sky, Harry discovered that flying was actually much easier than he thought, almost like walking or running. After a few simple straight lines back and forth, he began to circle around the Gryffindor classmates. Following Mrs. Hooch's arrangement, Harry's speed was not very fast, but he changed directions a lot, swinging back and forth around his friends in the dormitory. "Ron, you look like you're not as flexible as me," Harry mocked happily. As for Lauren, Neville and the others can't even fly yet, but Ron is better. Hermione looked hot. "I knew he was talented," the little witch thought to herself. "The broomstick doesn't hit my butt, nor does it hit another place. Sitting on it feels like a force is acting on my whole body, supporting me from all directions." Lauren was flying slowly on his broom, in the last echelon with Hermione. He was thinking that if he saved Neville, there would be no memory ball plot, and whether Harry would have to wait a year later to join the Quidditch team. However, this is not a loss. This is not the first time Malfoy has ridden a broomstick, and it flies smoothly. He has been looking forward to flying lessons for a long time, hoping to amaze everyone and make everyone praise him during the flying lessons. But first he was criticized by Mrs. Hooch, and now he was stolen the limelight by Harry. He was in a bad mood now. Malfoy looked at Harry and felt agitated. He pushed down the broom head with both hands and bumped it towards Harry. Harry was changing direction, and the broom tail brushed his hair as he passed. From his perspective, a shadow passed before his eyes, and his heart skipped a beat in fright. This senseless provocation made Harry furious and was about to scold him. Vincent Crabbe, the taller of Malfoy's 2 lackeys. He saw Malfoy attacking Harry, with a ferocious smile, and rushed towards Harry. The Gryffindors around him screamed when they saw this scene. Harry dodged in time, feeling even more angry. He held the broom head, raised it, increased speed, turned it, and then kicked Crabbe towards Malfoy. Ah! Crabbe and his broom collided with Malfoy due to the force. Fortunately, the speed was not very fast, and the two of them only staggered a few times in the air. The Gryffindors laughed. "What a shame, Malfoy," Harry said with a smile and a relaxed tone. Malfoy became so angry that he almost hit Harry at several times the speed before. Harry had already noticed him, quickly lifted up to avoid it, and then taunted, "I think Hedwig can fly better than you." Malfoy said nothing, turned around and quickly bumped into Harry. Harry also increased his speed and distanced himself. The two of them changed speed and turned in the air, and the distance was sometimes closer and sometimes further away. Malfoy has experience and can use skills to close the distance. Harry was a little nervous at first, but the flight became smoother and smoother, and he could close the distance quickly. He would not be fooled a second time by Malfoy's skills. The two quickly flew out of the activity area designated by Mrs. Huoqi, and the height had already exceeded the third floor. Only then did Mrs. Huoqi notice the two arrogant people. She waved her magic wand to bless her throat with a loud voice and yelled, "Stop, come down quickly." Malfoy didn't care. His father was the school director, so there was no need to worry. He must teach Harry a lesson. Harry hesitated for a moment, but Malfoy's malicious eyes stung his back. Professor McGonagall in the office saw this scene through the window, her eyes sparkling as if she had seen some treasure. Harry was on the broom, and the wind blew his hair into a mess, but he felt that his thinking was extremely clear. If he slowed down, he would definitely be knocked down and become several knots like Neville's broom. But he couldn't keep flying like this. He had to find a way to get rid of Malfoy. Harry increased his speed and flew towards the clock tower. His speed was getting faster and faster, and he was about to hit it. Malfoy was still chasing after him, and he felt that he had guessed what Harry was thinking. The Scarhead thought that he would not dare to follow the speed and hit the clock tower. When he slowed down and turned, Harry would have been ready to turn and go directly to Huoqi. Lady. It would take time for him to accelerate again, and he wouldn't be able to catch up or teach Harry a lesson. Malfoy was secretly proud of himself, wondering how this stupid Gryffindor could fall for such a trick. He made up his mind that if the Scarhead didn't turn, he wouldn't turn. Even if he crashed into the clock tower, Harry would be there to support him. The two of them rushed faster and faster, and were about to hit the bell tower. People from both colleges exclaimed, some girls covered their eyes, and some couldn't bear to see what happened next. Finally, Harry turned, almost 90 degrees perpendicular to the wall, quickly climbed towards the sky, and finally turned back and stopped on the eaves. Harry was furious. He enjoyed the process of flying quickly in the sky, enjoying every sharp turn, descent, and lift. He loved the feeling of flying. Malfoy couldn't react, so he hit the wall and fell down. There were some trees to cushion the fall, but the broom still broke into several knots. Malfoy groaned and fainted. Harry landed and became a little at a loss. He just wanted to get rid of Malfoy, but he didn't expect that things would turn out like this. Mrs. Hooch rushed over quickly. Instead of blaming Harry, she immediately checked Malfoy's injury. Harry heard her whisper, "A broken arm, a leg, and a few ribs, it's okay." Madame Hooch asked everyone to put the brooms back to their original places and then dispersed. She used a levitating spell on Malfoy's robe and took Malfoy to find Madame Pomfrey. Mrs. Hooch didn't blame Harry, but he felt uncomfortable now. Malfoy was injured and got the punishment he deserved. Why did he feel guilty now, thinking that there might be a better way to get out of the situation at that time? Ron rushed over and saw a dejected Harry. He didn't think much about it and just thought he was frightened. He reached out and patted Harry on the shoulder. "Harry, are you okay?" Harry looked up at his friends and forced a smile. "I'm fine, Malfoy is injured." Hermione interrupted at this time, "You may be in trouble. Professor McGonagall may expel you from Hogwarts." Harry's face turned even paler when he heard this, and Ron didn't know how to comfort her. "Harry Potter." Professor McGonagall ran towards them, and Harry felt a little weak in his legs. Professor McGonagall looked directly at Harry. "In all my years at Hogwarts, I have never." Professor McGonagall was so surprised that she couldn't speak. The lenses of her glasses flashed with anger. "How dare you, you will break your neck." Professor McGonagall took Harry away. Ron, Neville, and Seamus were very sad. They thought Harry would be expelled. Only Lauren was not worried at all. He watched the whole drama with his mouth open. Turtle, does this have any plot correction power?